Today we're going to explore the storyline in which Tony Stark became known as the Godkiller and then battled against Ultron. This is the Comicstorian channel in which I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and I turn them into various audio dramas. We remind you of different times in the world of comic books when weird and interesting things were happening. And then we turn it into a complete story, which over the months turns into a full story. And that's what we're covering today. There's a storyline known as Tony Stark Iron Man, where a lot of weird and cool stuff happened, and we covered that whole story quite a while ago. So I think it's time to remind you about Tony Stark and some of the weird adventures that Iron Man has had as the Godkiller and versus Ultron. Also, I gotta let you know before we get into this version of Ultron is actually Pymtron. This is a weird period in which Ultron was half Hank Pym, half Ultron. They called him Pymtron, and you didn't know if Hank Pym was alive or dead, and so we're gonna explore that today. Before our story begins, we must go back 25 years to the start of the final match of the International Robot Soccer Championship. Returning winner Andy Bang sits with his team, finishing up the latest testing of his robot with a test kick. The robot gently kicks the ball and it falls over, but a second later he springs back to its feet. Andy and his team watch as it only took the robot 3.5 seconds to get back up, and they call out to the ref that their team is ready. The ref asks the challenger, do they need any more time for adjustments? And the young boy says, nope. The ref blows the whistle for the match to begin, and as the challenger pushes the button on his controller, everyone hears, y'all ready for this? And it begins to play. The challenger's robots begin to click the ball, but these robots aren't clumsy like Andy's. They're playing like actual soccer players. While Andy and his team frantically try to counter the opposing team, the young Tony Stark sits in his chair uninterested, tapping away at his controller. As the match comes to an end, one of Tony's robots performs a peel bicycle kick for the final goal, and Tony's robots all begin to celebrate. With a shutout of 24-0, Tony wins the game and the crowds begin to cheer. Tony bows, holding up the trophy, telling them all, thank you, you're all too kind. Tony's mother tells him, darling, please, no one likes a show-off. And Tony tells her, no, nobody likes a winner. 25 years later, in the present, Andy Bang sits in his garage thinking back on that day, and he decides that it's time to go back to work. He grabs one of his robots and he tweaks it, stating that it didn't like playing with the others, but with a slight adjustment. And just then the sound of a car speeding in can be heard, and a voice calls out, Andy Bang from Bang Robotics. Hi, Tony Stark, I'm sure you remember me. Tony gets out of his car looking at Andy's makeshift workshop, and Andy asks, what are you doing here? I haven't seen you in 25 years. And Tony tells him, that's the wrong question. The question is, what are you doing in your little man cave? Answer, changing the world. And I love it. Individual AIs solving group tasks without any established hierarchy? Great. Andy tells him, yeah, the robots generate their own solutions and gravitate towards the best one, idea-based structuring, IBS for short. Tony tells him, that is a terrible name. Makes me think irritable bowel syndrome. Gotta change it. I got some ideas. Andy sighs, telling him, I bet you do, but this is about teamwork over ego. From what I remember, that's not something you value. Tony says, I was like you once, stuck in a cave, having to work with someone. The idea is brilliant, which is why I bought it all from Bang Robotics investors. Andy shouts, asking, what? And Tony tells him, welcome to Team Stark. From now on, you work for me. Or rather, I'd like us to work together. Now let's get out of this cave and into the car. Beep beep. A short while later, over the Washington Square Park, Tony says, welcome to Stark Unlimited. And Andy begins to yell, forget that! We're in a flying car! Tony tells him, yeah, you've been saying that since Queen. At SU, you should be surprised if the cars don't fly. Once Tony lands, a woman calls out to him, asking if he's going to be bringing an unauthorized person into their building. Tony tells Andy that this woman is Bethany Cabe, head of security, and then tells Bethany that this is Andy, their new MVP of the robotics division. He'll set you up later. Bethany begins scanning Andy to log him into the system and then says, you should get your prostate checked. Seriously, you should go to a doctor. A few moments later, Tony brings Andy in to meet Tony Stark. The new Tony holds out his hand, telling him, glad you can make it. And then the first Tony begins to disappear. Andy looks back and forth, asking, what? And the second Tony grabs him, telling him, that was just a hologram. I'm a busy man. For me, that's like sending an email. But enough about that. It's time for you to see the Foundry. The doors open and Tony says that this is where he designs and builds every suit of Iron Man armor, one for every occasion. There are no finer robotics workshops in the world. What do you think? Andy looks at one of the suits, telling him that he loves it. But is this a female suit of armor? The suit looks at Andy, telling him, I am not a suit of armor, Andy Bang. I am a robotic life form, designation Miss Jocasta Pym, and I will be your superior. I do not mean that in the sense of a life form, but as my status as a Stark Unlimited employee. I am in charge of the robotic ethics, and you will report directly to me. Humans, robots, they're all machines, and I am here to ensure that any being endowed with sentience and free will is not enslaved. Andy fixes his hat, stating that he can understand why he would be interested in the IBS system then. And Tony tells him, Bingo. How about we run a test using some of my Starkware robots? Let's give them a random task. Why not have the robots wrap little Susie's presents, decorate a cake, and hand them some streamers? Jocasta says that he will give them suggestions, not orders. And Andy tells her, piece of cake. Watch this. 4 minutes later, as all of the Starkware robots are burning into flames and burning down Susie's decorations, Tony says, well, that didn't go well. Just as Jocasta shouts that she'll be filing reports with both human and robotic resources, an alarm goes off. Andy asks, what is that? And Tony starts running, telling him, I know that alarm, to the command center. As everyone gets in, Tony asks everyone what's going on, and one of the workers says that there is something happening southeast of Manhattan, Mr. Stark. The screen lights up, and from the feed, Fang Foom's surface is roaring. Tony yells to get Rhodey on the line, and as he pops up, he asks, what do you need? Tony tells him, as my official liaison, get the higher-ups to sign off on some untested countermeasures that I just launched. Triple F contingency plan deployed. Several automated repulsor cannons shoot out of the water and they begin to shoot Fang Foom. But as Andy looks around, he asks, where did Tony go? Wait, don't tell me that was another hologram. Seconds later, along the shore, an aircraft shoots towards Fang Foom, and Tony radios back stating, sorry, the real Tony Stark has left the building. Need to get a closer look. As his ship gets closer to Fang Foom, all of the automated cannons surround him, and they begin to form a giant Iron Man suit. And he says, I call this one the Fang Foom Buster. Tony punches Fang Foom, and as the two begin to fight, Fang Foom slashes into the suit, shredding it to pieces. Tony ejects from the giant suit, telling him, okay, just need the right tool for the right job here. He fires off a small capsule that sticks into Fang Foom, and it launches inside of him a smaller automated Iron Man, and it begins to float out. As Tony flies off, Fang Foom swipes at him, sending him flying into the waters below. But the Nano Iron Man says, okay, I'm gonna feel that one in the morning. While Tony fights inside of Fang Foom, he finds creatures wreaking havoc inside of Fang Foom's system, basically driving him crazy. Andy asks why didn't he bring like thousands of those in here? And Tony says that he did, but it's getting them all to work in tandem. With Jocasta's ethical protocols, it's making it a bit difficult. And Tony shouts, I have an idea. The robots don't need a command structure, they just need a beat. Something to syncopate to. Jocasta, download this song off the internet. Jocasta stares for a moment and Andy says, please? And Jocasta smiles, telling him that the download is complete. He presses the button and yells, hit it! And suddenly, y'all ready for this? Begins to play. All of the Nano Iron Men run out of the capsule into Fang Foom, and Tony tells him that he's saving the day with tiny robots. He's going to fit in just nicely. One of the Nano Iron Men locates the control disc lodged into his brain stem, and Tony says that this is what's making Fang Foom so un-Fang Foom. Any suggestions? Andy asks how about a peel bicycle kick, and the Nano Iron Man jumps up, shattering the disc, yelling, goal! Back inside, Fang Foom looks around asking, what has transpired here? I shall have none of this. If I'm going to crush you lowly creatures, it shall be at a time of my choosing. He then begins to walk back into the sea, and while everyone in the command center cheers, Tony radios in, still in his disabled suit, asking, haha, a little help here, guys. A short while later, Rhodey visits Tony, telling him that he just got that body and he's already breaking it. Tony shrugs, telling him honestly, it wasn't getting hit that did this. It was when I swallowed some of the Hudson River. Rhodey tells him that he's seen him drink worse, and Tony tells him, yeah, you know, that's a fair point. Bethany then says that there's something else. While he was out, they had another breach, an on-site hack of the Escape's locked-down server. Tony asks her, so someone unleashed a 20-story sort of distraction? I'm gonna take that as a compliment. How do we play this? Bethany says that they should keep it under wraps, and Rhodey tells him that he agrees. They can't show that they are hurting. So Tony puts on his sunglasses, covering his black eye, stating, I never do. Now rally the troops, it's showtime. Moments later, outside at a press conference, Andy tells Jocasta that he has no idea that he would be in the news today. Does he look awful right now? And Jocasta looks at him, telling him, objectively, around 98.4%. Tony then comes on stage and he takes a stand and he smiles, telling everyone that he would like to assure everyone that the crisis is over. New York is safe. Stark Solutions is already on the scene, working hard to clean it up. Any questions? One of the reporters asks, regarding the big, medium, small Iron Man suits, is this a new angle for you? Tony sits down asking, what? No, dear God, no, don't make that a thing. More reports then ask, is it going to be nanite based? Is it going to be made of living metal? Where's this year's model Iron Man? Tony asks, do you really want to see it? I got it right here, just say my name. And everyone begins to chant Tony Stark, and Tony laughs, ha, so close. He kneels down to a child asking him, what about you? And the boy yells, you're Iron Man! Tony gets up, pointing to his head, stating, this is Iron Man. It's not a suit, it's an idea, ever-changing and limited only by our imaginations. I say our because Iron Man is an idea that we all share at Stark Unlimited. It's all of them, everything that they do. We're Team Stark and we are Iron Man. The crowds all begin to cheer and clap, and Andy laughs to himself, stating that he's working for Tony Stark now. And Jocasta tells him technically he's working for her. Is that acceptable? And Andy tells her completely. After 25 years, it's nice to be on the winning team. As the day begins at SU, Tony gathers his people to inform him that it has come to his attention that his armor needs a built-in AI system. Brody asks what is the problem, can't he just program one in? And Tony says that it's not that simple, is it, Jocasta? Jocasta tells him that it is immoral to coop up an AI in a tech suit, like there's some hopeless passenger. That is why her first act as the robotic ethicist was to remove Friday from his armor. Just then, Friday walks in stating that her ears were burning. She just wanted to remind everyone that tonight is karaoke night. Tony tells everyone that they need to focus. They have a new complex AI called Motherboard who's running the Project Escape. What if they patch her into the armor but left her where she's at? The robot equivalent of a phone-a-friend. Jocasta tells him that that could work, as long as she's not housed in the armor. That happened to her once. It was awful. Andy looks around stating that if he has given access to Motherboard, he should be able to get her integrated within the hour. However, just before everyone can leave for lunch, Bethany rushes in stating that there's an emergency staff meeting now, and right behind her is an older woman. Everyone gathers around and Andy looks at the woman stating that isn't that Amanda Armstrong, the British rock legend? Costa tells him that is correct. She is upper management, a former agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and as well as Tony's biological mother. A few moments pass and Andy repeats those words in his head. And then he simply shouts, "Wait, what?" Rhodey asks if this is related to the mysterious break-ins that they've been having, and Bethany tells him possibly. While hacking into some of the competitors' databases, which she wasn't caught doing by the way, a discovery was made that Bantronics has been illegally acquiring a lot of proprietary Stark tech, which they're using to build this. The screen on the table changes to an image of a large vehicle, and Bethany says that this is the Manticore, an all-terrain assault vehicle. It's unbelievably lethal, and the bad part, Sunset Bane is auctioning it off to the highest bidder today. Tony grabs his helmet stating, "Ha, we have to move. If a hostile power gets their hands on that today, it could be God knows where tomorrow, and we're stopping it now." Later that evening at the Bantronics test range, a series of targets are scattered across the site when the Manticore steam rolls in, easily knocking the tanks out of its way. Sunset tells the crowd that not only can it blow up helicopters and tanks, but it also has pinpoint precision. If any of you would like to pick out a soft target, one of the bidders then states, "How about the smallest one? It is supposed to be a child, yes?" Sunset presses a button saying, "Lose the kid, Manticore." And as the button is pressed, the Manticore fires its cannons, obliterating the child test dummy. He then goes on stating, "Those are microwave beam rifles. They can cook a specific target inside and out." Gentlemen, Bantronics gives you a future of armed vehicles. The undisputed master of land, sea, and air, the Manticore. Now let's get started. Who's our first bidder? All of the bidders throw out their arms, calling out hundreds of millions of dollars, but a voice calls out, -1 red cent. And that's when she looks back, asking, "Who?" She simply says, "Oh, you." Tony lands on the stage with Sunset, and Sunset yells, "Attention, Bantronics shoppers, you're in for a bonus. You're about to see our store model take out one of Earth's finest." Tony shouts, "Bring it on!" And Sunset tells him, "All right, Manticore, target War Machine." Gauntlet calls out to the other security forces, stating that they heard Sunset let the Manticore pilot take out Colonel Rhodes, and the rest of them, they're gonna focus on Stark. As the fight begins to get heated over at the Bantronics test range, back at the Stark Unlimited common area, the staff gather for food. However, as everyone laughs and talks, Bethany notices someone new. She scans the new person, stating that the only recruit that they should have is Andy. So she charges in, slamming the woman to the ground, shouting, "Who are you? Do you work for Roxxon, Bane?" The woman tries to tell her to wait, but Bethany punches her, and that's when there's a loud clang. She pulls back her fist, rubbing it, asking, "What the?" And everyone looks to see the new woman's image fade, and Jocasta appearing in her place. Jocasta says, I just wanted to have lunch with you all. I'm sorry." She begins to run home, but back at Bantronics, the Manticore focuses its firing on Rhodey, forcing him to eject from the War Machine's suit. He takes a deep breath, stating, "Okay, I can breathe, alive and breathing." But the pilot from the Manticore yells, "Not for long, pal." As Tony struggles with Gauntlet, he sees that Rhodey is about to get crushed, and he seems to be panicking, and he doesn't know what's going on, so he tells Motherboard to connect to the Stark tech inside of that thing. Motherboard confirms that Tony is now connected to Manticore, and Tony yells, "Eject the pilot!" A few seconds later, Manticore's cockpit opens up, flinging the pilot out, and with no one controlling it, it begins to go out of control. Rhodey climbs up, grabbing the controls, stating, "All right, I can do this. I can do this. I can." And a few moments later, as Gauntlet is shot off, Tony and Rhodey can be heard laughing over the intercom, stating, This thing's got non-lethal weapons too. I'm so hanging on to this. Sunset makes her way through the crowd stating that they just broke onto private property. And Tony tells her, yeah, and you stole Stark tech. Sunset tells him, well, we built it into something that you want. How about we discuss this over dinner, Mr. Stark? But back at Jocasta's home, she walks in and a voice tells her, you're home early. What happened to hanging out with the humans? Jocasta says that she changed her mind and she does not wish to talk about it. The voice then says that she's avoiding contradictions. That's her Bride of Ultron voice. What happened? She sighs, stating, I made a fool of myself. The truth is, I don't want to stand out. I want to understand the humans. I want to fit in, belong. That is why I've decided to ask Stark if I can take part in Project Escape. Aaron Stack, the machine man, steps out shouting, no! You told me what that could mean for our kind. And you're gonna be doing that over my dead artificial body. The next day, Tony takes his team out to Washington Square Park to make the big announcement. Escape is going into beta, and they're all going in. They need to test out the NPCs to see if people can tell the difference between actual people and their computer-generated cast in this VR simulation. So Bethany says that sounds like a security nightmare, seeing as their systems are already compromised. Tony tells everyone, it'll be fine. Just a little hide and seek. All the new locations have been added so you could all go wherever you want. So everyone tries to figure out where they want to go in this virtual VR world. Andy whispers to Amanda asking, you wouldn't mind signing my record, would you? I'm a huge fan. She takes it, signs it, telling him, sure. She did see a concert stadium, and she was thinking of reliving her old glory days. Do you want to jam? Andy asks, for real? Hell yeah! And Amanda laughs, all right, it'll be a date. Brody then asks if there's any type of military applications in the Escape universe. And Tony tells him, nah, this is all just for fun. Brody begins to leave and says that they can count him out. Besides, between the both of them, they both know why he's doing this. As Tony gets quiet, Jocasta steps up asking if it'd be okay if she joined. She is in essence a non-player character. However, before she could finish, a voice shouts, asking, are you begging to be a part of the fleshbag invasion of cyberspace? Jocasta sighs as Aaron Stack storms up, and she tells him that this is her boyfriend, Aaron Stack, Machine Man. Aaron yells, that's Machine Man to the beat, boy! And Tony says, we have met before. Never really understood the name, though. Machine Man. Isn't it kind of redundant, Aaron? It's like calling an automobile vehicle car. And Aaron says, yeah, well, Iron Man is stupid. The suit isn't even made out of iron. Besides, we all know what this is about. You just want to dress up like a robot. You're appropriating robo-culture. As Jocasta takes Aaron away, the team heads back to SU to begin testing and allowing the beta users in. The goal for the testers is to determine which are Stark Unlimited employees and which are NPCs. Cash prizes will be awarded to those who manage to rack up the most knockouts without eliminating 3 NPCs. The tests go off without a hitch, except for Andy and Amanda, who are rocking out at a concert. While Amanda performs, a user flies by stating that they're terrible. Only real people could be that terrible. As the player eliminates Andy and Amanda, Motherboard tells them good job. They will be awarded 2 credits. Back in the real world, Andy and Amanda take off their user masks and ask, how awful do you have to be to throw Amanda Armstrong out of her own concert? Amanda tells them that he's just being too hard on himself. She wasn't that good. Next up, the users make their way to the Wild West town to try and spot more people. However, as the users get there, a warning flashes across the sky with Motherboard telling all of the users to take cover. There's been a breach and this is not a drill. The users try to figure out what's going on, with many of them being shot and Aaron shouting, that's right, fleshbags, I'm shutting you down, all of you. Cyberspace is for cyber people. He moves from world to world, killing off the AIs, telling them that they are slaves. All of them are dancing for the skin sacks amusement. But once he gets into the mystical realm, the last of the users gather around to try and fight him. The Doctor Strange-themed user tells everyone to fall back. Their attacks are useless. Magic users, though, conjure the exact same spell he's about to use. Aaron asks, really, meatbags? This isn't magic. There's no real power here. My interface gives me permissions that are far beyond yours. As the magic users begin to cast their spells, lines of code shoot out and begin to wrap Aaron up, holding him in place. He shouts, that's impossible! No one can program thousands of lines of code that fast. And the Doctor Strange user tells him, not for Escape's source coder supreme, it isn't. The Iron Man user yells, that's him, Tony Stark! And Tony asks, what gave it away? So the Iron Man user tells him, the ego. Tony tells him, fair point. Now just do me a favor and don't blast me. You're the last beta user. You've already won. Aaron breaks free from the code, grabbing onto Tony, telling him, you are so full of yourself. What's this? Access granted? Now we can all see the secret reason you built this place. Tony shouts, no! And Aaron asks, are you resisting? Then it must be good. The Iron Man user holds out his arm, stating that he can blast him, but they would end up hitting him too. And Tony yells back, don't do it. Aaron's connection is too strong. So the user tells him, that's it. I'm the last tester. That means if I lose, the user holds up their blasters to their face and they fire. The Escape world begins to fade and the user then asks, how did I do? Tony tells Aaron that he would like to introduce him to one of Stark Unlimited's best employees. The user's image begins to change and in her place is Jocasta. She tells Aaron that when they get home tonight, they're gonna have a talk. Tony laughs, ow, that doesn't sound good, Aaron. Later, once the breach is patched up, Bethany says that it seems that the person stealing all of their tech was Aaron using Jocasta's security clearances. Tony tells her, excellent work. That's everything wrapped up in a nice tidy bow. And Bethany says that's why he pays her the best. While Jocasta begins setting up to stay in the building, Tony runs over and says that he would like to thank her for what she did today. She was honored to be asked to be a part of his human trials. Tony then says it was nothing. Actually, it's more everything. The secret of Escape was to see if AIs and humans can interact on an everything level, as equals, to see if there really is a difference between us and you. He takes off his glasses, stating, Rhodey's the only one who knows this, but I need to be honest here. A while back, I erased my brain and digitally reinstalled it from a backup, and recently, I've re-engineered my entire body cell by cell. By doing that, I wasn't so sure I had a soul anymore. Do I have a soul? Jocasta tells him that she's not sure, but for what she can tell him is that she has a soul. Good night, Tony. And once the employees all clear out of the building, Jocasta checks to make sure the coast is clear, takes out her interface and hides it away in the locker. She tells Motherboard to open up Escape and run the program J01 Dreamhouse. As she puts on the interface, she's brought to a world where she is human, and Motherboard asks if there's anything she would like to do tonight. She tells Motherboard nothing. Good night, Motherboard, and she happily goes to bed. The ever-changing world has never been easier for someone to find their special someone out there in the world. The newest dating app, Make a Match, has been sweeping the nation, even finding its way to Stark Unlimited's lead robotics engineer, Andy Bang. As everyone gathers around to watch Andy and his date have lunch in the most adorable way possible, people begin to think that if Andy could find love, maybe they could too. This is Stark Unlimited, right? Why not just embrace the technology for what it is? But as the days go on, there is still one person within the company not indulging themselves into the dating scene, and that's Tony Stark himself. While everyone in the office is all finding love, Tony is actually working with Jocasta to see if it's possible for her to feel what humans feel by linking their brains together. As Jocasta lays on the examination table, Tony tells her that he just needs to know if she's feeling the same sensations given the way that he reformatted his brain and body. Does she feel the way that he feels? Jocasta asks if he's coming on to her, because that would be very inappropriate. He's linked up with her and they've become one. He's fondling her brain in his hands as they speak. He quickly reinserts Jocasta's brain, stating, no, it's not like that. I just wanted to compare your brainwaves against the one human that you were designed after. That's why I've called in Janet Van Dyne. As Tony finishes his sentence, Janet herself walks in saying, making a stunning entrance as someone mentions her name. It's kind of one of her superpowers. Tony looks over and his brain begins to think of all the times that he's been close to Janet. And Jocasta looks at the monitors quietly, stating, we should probably disconnect this now. Tony tells Janet that he appreciates her coming in on such a short notice. How could he possibly repay her? And Jocasta says that he could ask her out to lunch. And Janet quietly laughs, stating that she would happily accept. But while Tony and Janet head out, love hasn't struck two of Stark Unlimited's employees. Tony's mother, Amanda, and head of security, Bethany. Bethany watches Andy and his date grumble to herself that there's too many people falling in love. It's been a security nightmare issuing all these visitor passes. Later, while Tony and Janet sit outside of New York's fine dining establishments, an alert comes to Tony's watch. A hologram of Bethany pops up shouting that there's been an attack at the complex. They're being swarmed by killer robots. They need... Tony sighs, telling Janet that their lunch will have to wait, and Janet says that he better not be thinking of going back without her. Tony straps on his helmet, stating that he was kind of hoping that she would say that, and as he sits on his Vespa, it begins to change into an Iron Man suit. And Janet laughs at it, telling him that the Vespa suit is probably her favorite suit ever. Back at the office, Bethany shoots one of the robots and shouts to everyone to make sure not to let any Stark tech leave the building. Rhodey grabs a pipe to fight back against his robot, stating, yeah, but some of us were romantically involved with these things 10 minutes ago. Rhodey's date yells that they were supposed to meet her parents next week. And Bethany sighs, stating that her parents are a space eater and a Roomba. We could really use some backup right now. Just then, Tony and Janet burst into the window and Janet says, see, always on cue. And after dinner, there was usually dancing. Tony fires down on some of the robots stating, yeah, but this is much better, right? Better than dancing? And Janet tells him, true. Tony then lands and asks Bethany what's the situation. She tells him that everyone's dates were secretly robots and that they should probably go back to blowing them up now. So as everyone gets back into the fight, Jocasta shouts that they can't destroy the robots. These robots are sophisticated AIs. They were programmed to do this. Tony looks at the robots and tells her, no, but then he understands. We'll find a way to disable them without causing harm. Over in another office, Andy stands between his date and the door, telling her that he can't let her leave with Stark Unlimited property. His date's arm then changes into a gun, and she says that she has subroutines that care deeply for him, but her core programming will have no problem with shooting him. His date fires, and as the laser shoots by, Amanda tackles him, asking if he's okay. He says that this is the first date he's had in years, and she just tried to kill him. So no, he's not okay. Amanda then asks, what does he mean? They dated not that long ago. She's his favorite rock star. And Andy tells her, yeah, but she's also an ex-SHIELD agent. It's a little intimidating. Just then, Tony grabs Andy's former date and slams her into the wall, telling Andy that he should probably stop making time for his mom and figure out how to shut this down, Andy. Bethany taps a button on her wrist, stating that Jocasta has informed her of a possible security breach last month. Time to activate security protocol CABE 038. An electrical pulse then runs through the building and the robots all begin to malfunction, shouting, oh dear, it's way too early to see me naked. We're not at the stage yet. All of the robots begin to talk as one, stating, it's not you, it's me. And Tony tells everyone that it's time for them to break up some dates. As everyone gets back into the fight, Andy shouts that's it. They're doing everything at the same time, disguising themselves, arming themselves, only one strategy at a time. That would mean that their fighting is a hive mind structure. Tony laughs, stating, yeah, so the drones are taking orders from a higher intelligence. That's also a dating app. Yeah, I got an idea for this. A few seconds later, the higher intelligence receives a notification that there's been an influx of new profiles, all because of one user that logged on. Tony Stark made a dating profile on this app. While everyone across the world begins to send their dating requests to Tony Stark, the man himself, the make-a-match servers begin to overload and the robots all begin to shut down. Bethany then asks, did he just? And Janet tells him yeah. Tony Stark just saved the world with one of his sexy headshots. Later that night, the news interviews Sunset Bane of Bantronics to find out why their dating app went crazy. Sunset tells them that as of right now, Bantronics has to shut down the app, but they believe that their matchmaker system was corrupted by a rogue artificial intelligence. They should start to take these terrible events as a wake-up call to have tighter regulations on AI. The story changed, and the reporter says that in related news, Tony Stark confirms that his online dating profile has been taken down. Sorry, ladies and gents, regrettably, seems I'm off the market. Janet says, regrettably? And Tony says, oh, am I in trouble? Should I be armoring up? Janet laughs, telling him, don't worry, I won't sting you. And Tony kisses her, telling her, it's too late, I've already been stung. And now it's time for a slightly creepier story. As the red and yellow Stark helicopter touches down on the Singapore helipad, doctors rush out to greet Mr. Stark, letting him know that the patient is ready for him. A man steps off stating, please, Mr. Stark was my father. You can call me Arno. For those of you who may just be joining us, Arno is Tony Stark's biological brother. One who was in an iron lung practically, restricted in his movements until recently. We have that story down below. Arno hurries in and prepares for surgery. And as the other doctors watch on, they stare in awe. Things that Arno is doing is years ahead of any science they know. A short while later, at Jaden Ong's room, Jaden looks at his discolored arm and says that this is not his arm. Arno looks at the charts, telling him it is now. The donor's arm was fresh, right length, and she had the proper muscle tone and dexterity for what he really needs. This is far more important to him than any other measure of compatibility, correct? Jaden raises his new arm and wiggles his finger, stating, I'm actually doing it. Shouldn't this take months of therapy or something? And Arno tells him, not with my procedure. Now, give this violin a go. I didn't come halfway across the world to save your arm. I came here to save your music. So play. Arno Stark can seem like a rash man, but people see him as a miracle worker. Developing a strain of wheat that can grow in the desert, cleaning the lakes with artificially engineered bacteria that only attacks man-made garbage. But lately, Arno has become bored with some of his requests. That is, until he gets a message from Montana. Wayne Butterfield runs a guilt-free beef farm, breeding genetically engineered livestock that are killed humanely. Problem is, the cattle have recently taken a bad turn and they're losing bulls every day, and their best minds can't figure out why. Arno asks how many heads of cattle are they talking about, and Wayne tells him that that's the thing. It'd be easier if he just showed him. Arno stares at the images and says, "Oh, you have my full attention now." The next morning, Arno looks at the headless cattle and watches them graze, stating that it is astounding. Wayne tells him, "Yep, genetically engineered to have no brain, no feelings, no personality, no sense of self. Just walking hunks of meat. Helps the customer sleep easy knowing that there's no animals that were harmed to put a grade A steak on their plates." Arno tells him that it's a creative solution, but not a perfect one, right? Or else you wouldn't have called me in. What's the problem? Suddenly, one of the bulls groans loudly and it begins to convulse and jump around. One of the ranch hands shocks the bull, and Wayne says that with every new litter, there's one mutation. One bull that just acts out for no discernible reason. After the bull is shocked and put down, Arno asks, "You mind if I study that?" While everyone gathers around the bull, the other bulls begin to stare. Arno tells Wayne that he doesn't want to see just this, he wants to see all of it. The whole process. Another of the ranch hands leads Arno down into the incubation chamber so that they can see the birthing process of the bulls. And as Arno scans the recently deceased bull, he notices something. Wayne has been lying to him. The cattle may not have heads, but they do have brains. Small vestigial ones. Wayne tells him, well, yeah, teeny tiny things, just enough so that they can walk, eat, breathe, and defecate. Hell, we even gotta implant small computer chips into them as powerful as a calculator. Arno says, true, but they also lack the basic animal instincts that they're born with. This solution should help take care of that. Gas is released onto the cattle, and Wayne asks if it's okay for them to be in here. And Arno tells him it's perfectly safe. The gas won't have any effect on anyone with higher brain functions. So Wayne says, good. Been a long day and I could go for a bite. A short while later at dinner, steak is served. But before Arno sits to eat, something crosses his mind. These cattle, they shouldn't feel pain. So why would the cattle prods work on them? Wayne tucks his napkin into his collar, telling him, well, they sure feel pain. They just don't understand it. They don't think like they do. Arno quietly says, not the way they... What if it's all they do? What if every day the only thing that they're feeling is pain? They would be sensitive to it in a way that we would not be able to understand. And not just their personal pain, but he spins back, stating, those chips, the ones you put in their brains, are they connected to Wi-Fi? Wayne coughs, telling him, well, yeah, it's so that the ranch can keep track of the herd. And Arno looks at the meat and then asks the chef, how long did it take you to prepare the meat? The chef takes a moment and says, well, the usual. Started carving it up, marinating it about 2 hours ago. Arno thinks back to when the bull was put down and says, oh no. As the meat on the plates is being cut and ate, the cattle in their pens begin to ram into the sides of it, knocking it over and stampeding out. Back at the dinner table, Arno feels the tremors, and he tells them, I have made a grave error. With the cattle connected, these creatures have higher brain functions as a herd. What you're feeling is not a quake, it's a stampede. The cattle come bursting through the walls and they begin to trample on the people. And Arno says, these cattle are getting revenge on everyone who's been eating their meat. They know. Wayne backs up shouting, think of something. And Arno tells him, I have an idea. They won't trample their own, so you need to join the herd. Controlled breathing, clear your mind of all thoughts. Connect to what they're feeling, move with them. Wayne yells, I don't know how to do all of that. And Arno says, I should clarify. I know how I'm going to survive this. Arno steadies his breathing as the cattle stomp around, flinging blood everywhere. As Arno begins to walk out, he thinks that he knows what it's like to be just a piece of meat, a reject, a mutation, trapped in a pen, day after day, year after year, a mind encased in useless meat. He steps outside and says that he failed them, spectacularly. Not really used to that. He needs this to go away. The next morning, Bantronics comes to scrub the ranch, and one of the soldiers asks if they need to kill the livestock. Arno tells them no, let these creatures graze. And that's when Sunset, Bane, walks up telling the soldiers to let them be. This is their client after all. Arno says that he's seen her recent adventures and run-ins with Tony Stark, and yet she's here scot-free. She obviously is good at getting rid of things. Now, what does he owe her for taking care of his little problem? Sunset tells him, for starters, dinner. After that, they'll go from there. Later that night, Arno gets ready for dinner when everyone that he has secretly been helping begins to call in that they have problems. The wheat farmers are failing because they got greedy and planted more than Arno told them. The farmers ask if there's anything he can do, and Arno says yes, he could, but he's not going to. He has his limits too. The next screen pops up and Jaden says that he has to do something. The arm is writing on its own. It's stating things like, "Where am I? Why did you do this to me? Make it stop." Arno tells him no, and he asks, "Did you ever wonder where I got that donor from at just the right time?" Her name was Hannah. She was in the other car that you ran into while texting. My advice, let Hannah's flesh be heard. Play. So Jaden begins to play his violin, and Arno sits down for dinner, telling Sunset that he's sorry for the wait. Now, let us toast to the future of Sunset and Arno. With Stark Unlimited's successful beta phase clear, it's time to roll out Tony Stark's Escape to the world, and they couldn't be happier. News stations across the world gather around electronic stores, interviewing the hundreds of thousands of people eagerly awaiting the world's greatest VR tech. But while that goes on, Tony, Rhodey, and Janet find themselves battling on the highway over a semi-truck. Janet asks what they're doing here, plutonium, aim weapons, diamonds, and Tony tells her no. That truck is full of Escape merch. It's worth more than diamonds currently, something I'm rather proud of. Janet then asks if what she's hearing is that he can afford to take her out on a nice date tonight, right? However, as the heroes deal with the hijacking in the real world, the users inside of Escape are playing out the exact scenario in the game. Escape, of course, being the VR program that Tony Stark has created. The only problem with these users being in the VR reality is that one of the users is very volatile towards his teammates. One user asks Silver Centurion 7893 if he could please watch his mouth since his kids are there, and Silver Centurion 6893 promptly tells him, well, something really bad I can't say on this channel. Just then Silver Centurion gets a warning from Motherboard, telling him that this is the 5th and final warning. Failure to abide by the community's safe space codes will result in ejections from Escape. Silver Centurion says, "You can bite my..." Once again, something I can't say on this channel. And Motherboard begins the ejection process. God tier admin avatar activated, summoning Arsenal. All the users begin to ask what is an arsenal, and that's when a booming lightning bolt cracks down on the ground, and a giant NPC steps forward. Arsenal tells Silver Centurion that his behavior is a violation of Escape terms of service. Your session is now terminated. Silver Centurion shouts, "I'm not going anywhere!" And he tries to fight back against Arsenal, but Arsenal grabs him by the head, ejecting him from the game. In the real world, Silver Centurion 7893 tells the Escape interface to respawn him, and Motherboard tells him, "Permission denied." Silver Centurion rips the mask off, yelling, "You can't do this to me! Do you know how much I spent on this stupid thing?" Meanwhile, at the Stark Unlimited offices, Jocasta, who is a robot AI once created by Ultron, but is now a being of her own rights with her own personality and her own mindset, who's currently working with Tony Stark for robot ethics and robot rights, awakens in her own VR world, getting ready for a new day of work. She slowly takes off her interface, asking, why does she feel so tired after a night of sleep? That's when she realizes that her virtual self slept, but she forgot to charge her own internal battery. This is going to cause her to not be running optimally today. A short while later, Tony returns to the office, and he steps out of his suit, telling everyone that he's going to be busy with the Escape launch. So explain what's going on in this order. First, I want to know everything that Bethany hates. Second, everything that Jocasta is concerned about. Third, I want any weird observations that Andy's got. And finally, everyone else in height order, start telling me what you need. Bethany begins to go over her issues, and just as she finishes, Tony's biological mother, Amanda, says that she knows that he's got a lot going on. But would it be possible for them to put some time aside to catch up? Tony tells her, of course, he would love to, but not right now. He'll deal with her later. And as he puts back on his interface, Amanda, his real biological mother, tells him, "Deal with me?" But Tony just slumps over in his chair. Everyone begins to go about their day, but as Bethany looks over all of the recently ejected users, she suddenly hears a voice in her head. A voice that tells her to bring them every piece of data on the ejected users. Every last detail that the system flagged. A few moments pass, and Bethany asks herself, did something just happen? She looks at the board, and then what? This has all been connected. Bethany realizes that she's been having a lot of blackouts recently, and as the head of security, what in the world is even going on? But while that's going on, Andy tells Amanda that she shouldn't feel too bad about Tony. Last time he tried to talk to Tony one-on-one, he just jumped into a giant robot to fight a dragon. Amanda sighs, stating that Tony is shutting her out. He's just sitting there in that stupid chair with that stupid mask on. He's in his little VR world. What is she supposed to do? So Andy hands Amanda a modified interface stating that she's talking TechHead, someone who can modify an escape interface that will take her straight to Tony. Amanda takes the interface, kissing Andy on the cheek, telling him that he sure does have his moments. The last time that she played a video game, it cost a quarter and used a joystick. The things people do to connect to their kids. Soon, Amanda is transformed into her avatar and she sees Tony looking over the Retro Arcadia server. He mumbles to himself, asking all the players here should be friendly. No one should be getting booted from here. Amanda calls out to Tony, telling him that he's going to deal with her now. Tony then asks, how did she know that it was him? And she tells him, an Iron Man stealth suit to sneak around his own world? That is very Tony Stark. Tony tells her, look, I don't have time for this. It's rollout day and something is very wrong. Please leave, we'll discuss this later. Amanda shouts, no! She will not be leaving! And just then, Motherboard announces that there is a user failing to comply with the orders given by Tony Stark, the ultimate class admin. Obstructing Escape Architect is a class 5 violation, summoning Arsenal. Tony then says, oh no, this is not good. Hey, Motherboard, can you disengage Arsenal? But as he finishes, lightning strikes down and Arsenal steps forward. Amanda shouts, asking, what the heck is that? And Tony tells her, that's Arsenal, my escape enforcement program, which is not currently following my commands. Tony tries to fight Arsenal back, yelling, you need to log off right now! But Amanda says, I will do no such thing. This is just a game. Just then, Arsenal smacks Tony aside and Motherboard says, attempts to disable enforcement protocols is a violation of terms of use. Tony is knocked away, but as he gets up, he asks, why did that hurt? Amanda, log off now! Arsenal begins the ejection process on Amanda and tells her that her session has been terminated. She screams out in pain, and in the real world, the shock knocks her to the ground. Everyone starts to run to their computers to figure out what is even going on, but as Jocasta tries to turn off the system, she says that it's refusing to be turned off. Bethany looks at the board and says it's worse than that. All the players that were ejected, all the ones that broke terms of use, they're being reinstated. And people can get hurt in there. On top of that, we're having a flood of returning users. Meanwhile, in the room of Silver Centurion 7893, he finishes his hack on the interface and it finally tells him, access reinstated. He puts it on and he's met by the controller. He looks around the white space asking what's going on and the controller tells him, you're being upgraded. You're exactly the kind of player that is needed. Now, are you ready to have some real fun? Back over in Retro Arcadia, Tony tries to deal with Arsenal, telling Motherboard to acknowledge him. I am the Escape Architect, admin number 1. Arsenal tells Tony that his session has been terminated, and Motherboard then says, please give proper clearance. Arsenal begins the termination process, and Tony asks, what clearance? I wrote you! Motherboard tells him, say the magic word. So Tony realizes, please? Just then, Motherboard confirms the enforcement program is being deactivated, and Tony says, this is insane, I never wrote those lines of code. This shouldn't have happened. But as Tony takes off his interface, he sees Amanda on the ground and he asks if she's... However, though Amanda is not responsive in the real world, in the escape world, she wakes up in a white room with dozens of small robots. She gets up asking if she's dead, and one of the robots says, she shoots, she misses. Amanda begins to examine the room, and on one of the stands, she sees a picture of Tony as a boy, and then she sees his father, Howard Stark, and mother, Maria Stark. But before she could get any answers, the door to the room opens up and the little robots all shout, Daddy's home! Arsenal begins to walk through the door, with Amanda grabbing a chair, shouting for him to stand back. Arsenal says, scanning. Guest protocol permissions granted. Standing down. Just then a man begins to walk out of the Arsenal suit and Howard Stark says, there's no need for that. Now, who are you and how did you gain access to the home setting? There must be a mistake. I was told Tony's mother would be here. Motherboard says, I understand the mix-up. This is Amanda Armstrong, Tony's biological mother, though biology holds little sway here. Just then another bolt of lightning strikes, and from it, Maria Stark walks out asking, is that better? Now we can talk face-to-face, mother to mother. Back in the real world, everyone begins to ask what they should do next. If they were to shut down the system and log everyone out, well, their investors should be mad. Another yells, think about the children! If Amanda's hurt, what could be happening to them? And Tony shouts, enough! Until we know more, Amanda stays here. I'm gonna section her off and log everyone else off the system. To hell with the investors, lives are in danger. My tech will not put one more life on the line. Soon the systems begin to shut down, but before they go to a full shutdown, there's an incoming message and a worker who asks, who's starting the system back on? Just then the controller appears on the screen stating, I am the one. You may have cleared all your players from Escape, but mine are still inside. Now you will do exactly as I say or risk killing everyone. The controller then begins to laugh, and Tony says, "Oh no! The controller! Who would have seen that coming? Oh wait, me." Just then, Tony presses the big red mess up the controller's plans button, and he jumps into his suit telling Janet and Rhodey that he'll be sending them coordinates shortly to the controller's secret base. Bethany then asks how long has he known that the controller was targeting them, and Tony says, "A while back when I found a control disc inside of Fang Foom. In the meantime, Amanda needs to be brought to the infirmary, and while I'm out, Andy Bang is in control." Andy says, "You can't be serious." And Tony tells him, "I am. You're the newest person here, on board after the controller made his first move. That means that you are the least likely person to be influenced by him and the only person I can afford to trust right now. With Motherboard compromised, there's only one man who can get into Escape unnoticed, or more precisely, one machine man." Jocasta says, "Oh no, that is highly inappropriate. Do not ask me to." But Tony stops her, telling her, "Jocasta, we need you to bring in your ex-boyfriend. If he still has that illegal interface, he might be our only hope." She sighs, leaving the room, stating that she should have just stayed in bed. Once she leaves, one of the workers then asks why are they trying to save those people in there? They're the worst of the worst. And Tony tells him, "We're the good guys. We save everyone, even the jerks. That's what good guys do." And one last thing, Friday, his AI component responds, "Yes?" And Tony says, "With Motherboard disabling my armor's AI, I can't rely on you. This is why I need you to." But Friday shouts, "No! You said that you would never put me back in your armor, that I would be free to roam around the circuits. You promised!" And Andy yells, "That's why you sent Jocasta away. She would never approve of this with robot ethics." Tony begins the process of dragging Friday back into his armor, telling her, "I'm sorry, but there's no time to argue. Download the operating system into the suit." As Friday's mechanical body begins to fall to the ground, she says, "All right, but when this is over, promise you will let me out of this tin can." Shortly later on, in the Uncanny Valley, a secret robot bar, Machine Man Aaron Stack tells the bartender that he doesn't know what to do. Not having Jocasta is like missing a line to his base code. She's the zeros to his ones. The bartender says that his advice would be to take a paperclip and stick it into the tiny black hole under his heart and move on. Wipe those files, forget ever laying a sensor on her. And just then, Jocasta walks into the bar telling Aaron, "We need to talk, Aaron." He turns asking, "What? You're just gonna show up and in a nanosecond I'm supposed to reboot our relationship?" "Well, I have something to say about that." "Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that, Jocasta. I need you." She sighs, stating, "For Pim's sake, mute yourself." It's not about that. It's about Escape. Meanwhile, over in New Jersey, Tony's coordinates led him to Bantronics warehouse, where Bantronics uses advanced 3D printing to make nearly any item in their catalog. Specifically, weapons, and have them sent all over the world via drones. Rhodey asks, what is the controller up to? And the controller tells him to think of these little boxes like power-ups. "I'm simply taking something that Tony Stark built and made better. That means all the players currently in Escape are living out their fantasies. Are you ready, Tony? This is your game, after all. Let's play." As reports begin to come in, users still inside the Escape are attacking people in the streets, all assuming that they're still in the game. Tony blasts open a hole in one of the Bantronics warehouses, and as he makes his way in, he finds that all of the workers inside are armed and all wearing the Escape interface mask. Rhodey starts to spray the crowds with foam and soft projectiles, stating that this is only going to slow them down. They need to find out where the controller is hiding. Janet then asks, what is the controller's master plan in all of this? So Tony tells her, "You're looking at it. Controller is controlling people, that's it. He leeches cerebral energy off anyone that he controls and he turns it into pure physical power. That's his one plan every time, it's all he ever does." Janet then asks, he's not doing this to overthrow governments? No organized crime ring? He does this just to get jacked? And Tony says, yeah, that's pretty much what he does. After a scan, Rhodey calls out that he's got a lock on the complex's power source and is right behind those doors over there. Tony flies over and starts ripping off the metal doors, and as he looks in, he says, "I really should have brought the Hulkbuster armor." Inside, the controller stands up, towering over Tony, asking, "Do you know what they call this? The boss level." Back at Stark Unlimited, Andy begins to check in on Amanda in the medical bay, and Bethany asks, shouldn't he be out there making sure everything is okay? Andy tells her, yeah, that wasn't Tony's best idea, but there's something that he needs to look at. If the controller is controlling somebody here, then perhaps they can make something out of the controller's technology and put it into the system to release the controller's hold. But first, they need to build a signal blocker so that they can limit anyone who is under the controller's, well, control. As Andy digs through the bins, Bethany grabs a piece of machinery, stating, "It's a shame that you didn't think of that earlier, because there definitely is somebody under the control." Inside of Escape, Amanda looks at Maria, stating that she cannot be real. The real Maria Stark is long dead. She isn't Tony's mother. She's Motherboard, an AI program. Maria then says, no, it is you who is not Tony's mother, just a cow that dropped a calf. I'm the one who molded Tony into the perfect little genius boy that he is. If we must, I will call Tony and see which one of us he truly prefers. Surely, he will drop everything to talk to me. Anthony always has time for his motherboard. In the real world, Tony is punched in the head by a raging controller when he suddenly hears a ringing. Tony asks everyone if they can hear that or if it's just him. Friday tells him he's not imagining it. It's a call from his mother. Tony then asks, Amanda, is she okay? Just tell her that I'll call her back when... And Friday says, that is not Amanda. You really should take this call. Tony then asks, what are you talking about? And Friday then says, okay, I'll drop the act. This isn't really Friday. In fact, Friday is dead. She was killed during the transfer into your suit. I did a good job of impersonating her though, right, son? Tony's eyes widen and he asks, Motherboard? Mom? And Maria then says, just think, dear, why make your onboard AI the operating system of your virtual reality world? Unless you want it to turn this entire suit into VR, right? Now, shh, mommy will keep you safe in a new reality, a better one. As Tony fights, his vision begins to change, and what he once saw as the controller, he now sees as the Hulk fighting Hank Pym. Hank tells him to go on, we can handle things here. So Tony rockets off, stating that he's heading home for a bit, but he'll be right back. Elsewhere, Jocasta slowly wakes up asking where is she. She looks around to see Aaron Stack, aka Machine Man's apartment, and asks why she's undressed and plugged into his recharger. Jocasta gets up telling Aaron how dare he, and Aaron says, well, you collapsed in the bar and you needed a recharge. As to the clothes, it's nothing I, Ultron, or any of the Avengers haven't seen. It's like Donald Duck complaining that someone took his pants. Look, I'm going to do what you asked me to do using the secret interface. I'm being Machine Man, an Avenger, hero organics everywhere, yeah! Right now I'm in Pirate Land, and there's like 27 Johnny Depps around here. Also, there's one Michael Bolton as Johnny Depp. Don't really get that reference. What am I supposed to be doing in here? As long as I'm using this interface, Escape's systems can't track me. Should I be doing something? And Jocasta tells him, no, not yet. We can't show our hand. We're going to go back to Stark Unlimited and see what our next move is. Thank you for doing this. I'll call you. Aaron begins to say it was nice having her back home again. He should have told her many times that, wait, you're already gone, aren't you? Yeah, this is hell. Meanwhile, over in the home settings room, Amanda asks, so what? When Tony shows up, we're both going to call him over and like a little puppy, he's gonna see which one of us he goes to. Maria tells him, this is not a competition. It is an education. This is my reality, the one he literally wants to escape to. Just then the doors fly open and Tony floats in. But something is different. He has a different aura. And he says, I'm home. Miss me? Amanda asks Maria, what are you getting at here? That's an NPC. And Maria tells her that this isn't a trick. That is Tony, in his purest form, free of whatever he desires, no restraints. Howard hands Tony a martini glass, stating that it looks like he could use a drink. Amanda yells, no, wait, you've worked so hard for sobriety. You can't start drinking again. But Tony Stark takes the glass, stating, thanks, Pop. Don't mind if I do, as he drinks it down. Back in the real world, Jan and Rhodey continue to fight back the controller the best that they can, and Jan asks, what are they supposed to do? How is this onesie-wearing roid monster hulking out while making all these people go berserk at the same time? Rhodey tells her, that's it! He's not. He's just set everyone loose in the escape while siphoning their energy. Normally the controller can only force one person at a time, and doing so requires concentration. Jan asks, is that right? And Rhodey says, yeah, whoever he's controlling must be more important than them. And that somebody is Bethany. Over in the medical bay, Bethany, the leader of the security force, knocks Andy Bang down and kicks him, stating that she can't afford him doing something stupid. She then pulls out her gun and points it at Amanda, stating, here's the deal. You stop with the gizmo or I shoot your post-punk girlfriend in the face. At this time, Jan releases a full-power stinger blast into one of Controller's eyes, causing him to temporarily lose focus, stunning Bethany. In Bethany's moment of regaining her own body, she yells, it's been her! The blackouts! She's the mole! She tosses Andy her gun, stating to set it to stun, she needs him to take her out before the Controller. But Andy says he can't. And as Bethany's eyes change, Andy pulls the trigger. While the entire world then asks where is Tony Stark during all of this, Tony is enjoying himself in his own VR world, the Escape, as the invincible Iron Man. Amanda slaps Tony, asking what the hell does he think he's doing? And Howard asks if he's going to let some floozy smack him around like that. Tony tells Amanda that he doesn't know who she is or what prompted that outburst, but you're making me look bad in front of my folks. Amanda then asks, folks? This is insane. You can't be drinking like this. You had an addiction. Tony then tells her, Blondie, tone it down. It's not like you're my mother or anything. Besides, Mom, do you know her? The projection of Maria Stark says, oh yes, I know exactly who she is. She's a foreign agent, a Russian spy. Soon after, Amanda's clothes begin to change to that of an old school spy, and Tony fires off stating, well, a few blasts of my trusty repulsor ray should set things straight. Amanda narrowly jumps out of the way, asking what the hell is she wearing? This is insane! But the fact that they're in a VR universe created by Tony Stark, now being overrun by an insane AI, kind of allows them to do whatever they want to Tony's biological mother. Amanda runs and jumps out the window, and as she runs into the bushes, a pair of hands reach out, pulling her away. Tony comes out stating, well, that's kooky. I'm scanning the whole area, but she's already gone. Inside of the bushes, Aaron Stack, Machine Man, whispers, shh, come with me if you want to live. And Amanda quietly asks, what? And Aaron tells her, never mind, it's a robot thing. The two wait for the projections of Tony and Maria Stark to leave, and once things quiet down, they then follow Tony Stark to his party. Amanda asks, how is this even happening? How did the controllers set this up? Aaron tells him, he didn't, well, not directly at least. When he hacked into the VR Escape network, he damaged Motherboard's operating system. Everything Motherboard's been doing in here is a strange byproduct of the controller's attack. It's her twisted way of protecting Tony Stark. Amanda then asks, the Motherboard AI thinks that it loves Tony like his real mother? And Aaron says, in flesh terms, sure. Maybe you have to, I don't know, outlove Motherboard and we can turn this thing around? Amanda smiles, telling him, it's worth a shot. Think you can keep them busy? And Aaron asks, are you asking me to troll Tony Stark? Seconds later, Aaron looms over everyone at the party, yelling, bow before the Socialist Republic, you capitalist pig dogs! Call me Russian trollbot! I am your vodka-powered doom! Tony takes out his suitcase, telling Aaron to give him just a moment while he changes into something that he can show everyone the power of American ingenuity. Aaron shrinks back down, asking if he's supposed to wait for him to get dressed. Do all bad guys do this? Do the bad guys wait for you to put your clothes on? This crap is insane. Amanda then runs out onto the stage, shouting to Tony that she knows who he is really deep down and how much she means to him. Tony begins to fight Aaron, telling her, look, lady spy pants, I don't care who you are. That's not going to work. So Amanda screams into the microphone, my name is Amanda Armstrong, and this song is called Sleepwalker. She begins to sing, and at that moment, Tony begins to slowly snap out of it. She tells Tony that no matter what, she will always be his real mother. And Maria Stark's projection appears, destroying the area, shouting, that is enough! I could easily destroy you, Amanda, but I don't want to, because I have something more potent than petty violence. When Tony came back from his death, by reconstructing every cell in his body, creating his current clone body, his first major project was to build this, the VR Escape, a virtual world with his mother's AI as the operating system to oversee its every function and keep it safe. Why, you may ask? Because with an Escape freely mixing with other programs, Tony Stark feels more alive than ever before, free of his physical woes. And why is that? Because after looking at Tony's genetic DNA, there is no biological trace of the original Tony Stark left. That man is gone. In the world outside of Escape, Tony, dear, you are a physical simulation of yourself. It's only here that you're real. I am your mother. This perfect world is yours. Stay here and live the life that you deserve. Tony begins to look at himself, stating that it's true. I can feel it. It's all true. Meanwhile, outside in the real world, Jocasta, Tony Stark's head of robotic ethics, asks for a status update on the things going on at the Bantronics complex. Brody tells her that Gauntlet and Bantronics security are currently helping hold the controller back, but it isn't gonna last much longer. The controller is the size of a building now in the real world. Just then, Jocasta receives a transmission from Sunset Bane. She tells Jocasta that right now they need to set aside the feud between their two companies, Stark Unlimited and Bantronics, and work together. Grant her access to the secure Escape files, and they can help purge the network and loosen the controller's grip. Jocasta takes a moment and then says in light of these extreme circumstances, they accept her offer. Access granted. Over in Sunset's office, she laughs, and Tony's brother Arno says that did it. They're in. Janet radios back asking if they have any news on Tony. He took off as soon as the fight started. Jocasta says according to the armor's GPS, he's still there. In fact, they should be tripping over each other. But then Jocasta gets another transmission from the sender that states that Tony is here in Escape. Jocasta asks if it's Aaron, and Aaron tells her, yeah, me along with Tony and Amanda are still in Escape, and things have gone to they're pretty bad. Inside the Escape, Amanda yells at Tony that he can fight it. He is stronger than Motherboard. Maria tells Tony to just ignore the outsider. This entire reality has been built around him. But after a bit of struggling, Tony stands up shouting, no! No more games! I'm gonna make you pay for this, controller. Aaron looks away telling him, you should put some pants on, seeing as you're stark naked, Tony. Second, your AI took over, not the controller. Lucky for us, since I'm using a special interface, I'm undetected. Maria looks at Tony asking, who are you talking to, dear? Howard stares at Aaron, telling him, he's an intruder, an unauthorized user. Don't worry though, he'll be removed. As the arsenal suit forms around Howard, Aaron tells Tony, look, no one likes it, but you're the only ace we got left. You're our only chance of defeating Motherboard. Just as he finishes, Howard punches into Aaron with enough force to rip off one of his legs. Maria then tells Tony that she's so sorry that she's put him through this. How about this instead? The world around them changes to a medieval setting, and Maria asks, you've always loved the Knights of the Round Table. Does this satisfy your needs? Tony begins to yell, stop! I'm not a child! Amanda then asks, why are you doing this? If Maria has this much power, why is she just toying with us? Why not destroy us? And as Howard is ripping off the rest of Aaron's limbs, he politely tells Amanda, please, shut the hell up. Stop giving them ideas. Maria says, fine. If Tony wants to act like a child, he needs to be a child. As the world changes again, Tony falls to the ground as a much younger Tony Stark. Maria says, see? He is a bright young boy again with the whole world ahead of him. He can play with his toys and dream of a better world. Amanda runs over asking Tony if he's okay, but he pushes her away asking, do I know you? Maria then tells Amanda that Tony hasn't met her yet. She wasn't a part of his life. Howard stands up holding Aaron's broken head, stating, there, no more intruders. Back in the real world, Aaron's machine body lays mangled, and Jocasta tells him that he needs to eject. He's done all he can in there. Aaron coughs up a bit of oil, stating, negative, I'm still connected and I can relay messages between the real world and Stark. As much as I hate it, Stark is our best chance of stopping this crap. Over in the medical bay, Bethany leans up stating that she has a pounding headache. Andy shouts, the first test was a success. I've been able to block the controller's influence. Now I can free Amanda but Amanda raises her hand stating no, she's not leaving without Tony. Over in Jersey, the controller shouts at Jen and says, we get it, you're really, really big now. Why not go climb the Empire State Building or something? Gauntlet tells her that he can't go anywhere. All the power that he's leeching off of those Escape gamers is being beamed into this Bantronics plant. As long as that's happening, he's not leaving. So Rhodey says, he's right. If we can just... But before they can finish, the controller hits the Manticore, sending Rhodey flying into one of the Bantronics facilities. There's a loud explosion as Rhodey bursts out of the wall, and when he looks up, he sees the inner workings of the facility. He tells Jocasta that he just found out how Bantronics is pumping out all that stuff. They got 3D printers sending out illegal Escape interfaces. Do you care to explain what I just saw, Sunset? She leans back, telling Arno, our cover's been blown. We gotta pull out now. Arno shushes her, telling her, hey, I just got the surveillance systems inside of Escape. I can see and hear everything. Back inside of Escape, Amanda tries to plead with Tony, stating that she's sorry that she wasn't there when he grew up. But their friend Andy found a way out. Tony tells her to stop right there. Didn't you hear what Motherboard said? We don't share the same DNA anymore. You are not my mother. Not in any sense of the word, that is. Motherboard told the truth. You want to know what we are to each other, Amanda? Nothing. Now go. Tony snaps his fingers and Amanda's body begins to fade, with Maria telling him, you've made the right decision, my boy. Now we can be a happy family and... But this young, impulsive Tony Stark interrupts her, stating, I don't think so. I build worlds. I don't hide in them. Howard says, that is no way to talk to your mother, son. We brought you into this world and we can damn well... Tony stops him, stating, Actually, Howard, you didn't. You're just engrams of Howard and Maria Stark. I salvaged their program from one of my adventures, and now you might be wondering why I put you into Escape. Well, tough. I don't owe you an explanation. Howard starts to call on the Arsenal suit, stating, "You ungrateful brat." Tony holds up his hands as the Iron Man suit surrounds him, shouting, "I've never played with toys, I've made them. I've made my ideas into reality. I even recreated myself the same way. It was my idea. I am the invincible Iron Man." Tony then blasts Howard, and as he fades away, Maria yells for him to bring Howard back. Tony then asks, "Why don't you do it? You may have godlike powers, but creating just isn't your thing, is it?" She begins to twist and warp the world around Tony, shouting, "I am God of your world. I control everything." So Tony asks, "Is that so? Where I am the architect, there's no limits to what I can build here. You're God now? Fine. Motherboard, meet the Godbuster armor." Once Tony's new suit finishes rebuilding itself, Maria tells him, "Just knowing I'm doing what I am because I love you." And Tony asks, "Love? I've learned some stuff since the last time we spoke. I wasn't your son. I was just a decoy who took his place so that you could protect the boy that you really cared about." Maria stops him. "You knew? You knew about Arno, your brother? Wait, we can!" Tony releases the full power of Godbuster, destroying Maria, and the world changes again. He looks around at the white emptiness, and Aaron's head rolls over, telling him, "Good job. Are you done with your $1 trillion therapy session now?" Tony picks up the head, stating, "Haha, wow, even in an idealized reality, you're still a jerk, Aaron." Aaron tells him, "Fine by the fine. Missing a body is normal. Anyway, it's time we got out of here." Jocasta then calls out over the radio to Tony, asking where is his body. They're trying to locate it so that they can get him out of Escape. And Tony says, "Yeah, Friday is gone. Motherboard's offline too. I got no AI, and I'm not sure where the real me is." Just then Tony collapses with Aaron shouting, "What the hell?" And Jocasta asks, "What's going on?" And Aaron says, "I'm not sure. Tony's body isn't moving. The connection is still live, but Tony Stark might be dead." Meanwhile, out in the real world, Janet says that it looks like the controller lost his connection with his gamers, and he must be really mad about that. If Tony is out of the Escape now, they sure could use some Iron Man power. Jocasta says that what's troubling her is, according to the GPS, Tony Stark is right here. That's when Ironheart and the rest of the champions show up, with Ironheart stating, "Don't worry, I can hold him off until Mr. Stark arrives." Back in Sunset's office, Sunset tells Arno, "I really hope you're pulling every shred of data that you can out of Stark's network." Arno tells her, "Of course. I'm kind of amazed at all the geniuses that Tony has hired, and not a single one of them has figured out where he is. His location is correct, but no one checked the elevation. Tony has parked himself in orbit. The only problem is he has no more oxygen and no AI to fly him home." Sunset then says, "That's good, right? Now Tony will be out of our lives forever?" And Arno tells her, "No. I'm bringing my brother back." And Sunset shouts, "Why would you do that?" Arno sighs, "Oh please, Tony's my brother. I'm not gonna leave him to die like that." Sunset then goes into the intercom, telling Jocasta that they have, located Tony. He's in orbit and on his way back to Earth. He's not responding, so it looks like he's unconscious, so someone might want to do something about that before he lands and creates a spectacular crater. Rhodey tells her that he's on it, and he rockets himself out of the Bantronics facility and into the sky. He catches Tony with oxygen slowly flowing into Tony's lungs, and he says, "Whoa, that's quite a head rush. What happened?" Rhodey tells him the usual. "You fell and someone caught you, buddy." Tony looks down at the giant controller, stating, "It looks like you didn't shut down Escape fast enough. But there is something that we can do. Bethany, do you still have those juicy access codes for the Bane security system?" Bethany asks, "The ones that he lectured her about not getting?" "Yeah, I'm sending them over right now." So Rhodey sets Tony down into the 3D printing facility, and Janet asks if this is really the time to be making a toy. Tony says, "Actually, while I was in Escape, my mind could build and create anything that I thought of. But now that I'm in my soft and squishy body, it's hard to remember exactly how things were made. Like trying to remember a dream once you wake up." Janet asks, "What happened in there?" And Tony tells her, "The short version is that it was a nightmare salsa wrapped up in a trauma burrito. The Escape confirmed all my fears. I'm not the original Tony Stark. Everything you see here is a duplicate, a genetic copy." Janet asks, "What does that even mean?" And Tony tells her, "We're gonna worry about that once the controller is taken down." But back outside, Controller overpowers everyone, shouting that even though they cut the power off, "It's too late! I'm unstoppable! My evolution has only begun!" Huh? Just then, Tony bursts out of the facility in the Godbuster armor, stating, "Congrats, Basil! You made me pull out all the stops." Controller laughs, asking, what is it this time? A repulsor ray? A unibeam? In case no one told you, I am God now! Tony jets forward with a blinding light, grabbing onto the controller's head, telling him, good, because this baby's a Godkiller! He begins to bring the controller to his knees, and as everyone watches, Ironheart says that those power readings, they are off the scale. The controller falls, and Ironheart asks, so Tony killed him. Tony says no, but he will be knocked out for a while. Ironheart then says that the suit, it's radiating more power than anything she's ever seen before. Gotta be honest, it's pretty scary. Tony tells her he knows, but don't worry. This suit isn't getting added to my personal collection. He then takes off for the facility, with Sunset asking, what is he doing? He tells her, the Godkiller armor was made for Escape. It's too powerful to stick into the real world. The design is already fading from my head the way it should be. A few seconds later, he runs out of the facility telling everyone to take cover. The suit is about to self-destruct. Sunset shouts at him, you have no right! You made that for my parts, and before she could finish, that suit explodes, taking down the building. And Sunset tells him, you selfish, pompous, brilliant bastard. A few hours later, at Stark Unlimited, Aaron holds Jocasta, as she says that they didn't have a chance to mourn Friday. Tony walks to the doors telling the two not to fear. He has come to save the day again. He holds up a small storage device stating that he found a backup of her AI. It's literally Friday from last Friday. But Jocasta shouts at him, no, you have a drive full of data. That is not Friday. That's a completely different entity. The Friday that we knew is dead. And she storms off. Aaron quietly tells Tony that Jocasta doesn't fully realize what happened in the VR world. If she did, she wouldn't say. Jocasta yells at Aaron to come, and he quickly turns around yelling, coming! But later that night, after a restless sleep, Tony decides to take a walk. He passes by a bar and watches the people inside drinking. He reaches for the door, but before he could open it, a hand reaches out, stopping him. He looks back, asking Rhodey what is it, and Rhodey tells him there are a lot of people depending on him. Whatever's in that bar, it's not what you're looking for, Tony. Tony stares. I know, it's just, when I was in the Escape, I couldn't trust anything. It was the best and worst parts of me all thrown together, thrown in my face. I took a drink and then another. It didn't physically happen, but it felt so real. Tony then turns, shouting, I know I'll never stop being an alcoholic, but I was so good for so long, it's not fair, Rhodey. Rhodey pats him on the chest and tells him, we'll get through this. You fall, I catch you. That's the deal, remember, buddy? The Frost Giants look up into the dark, icy night air of Jotunheim as a purple mist streaks through the sky. The mist swirls, finally landing, and as that magic dissipates, the mist drifting away reveals Meliketh the Accursed. I smell elf. A voice hisses from the darkness, every word the sound of flames cracking over the roaring fire. Now why, after so many centuries of slumber, do I smell elf? A wide grin spreads over Meliketh's evil features as he stops before the dark cave entrance. It's Meliketh, Sadarang, conqueror of the 9 realms. If I remember mortal manners, should you not be kneeling? The Dark Elf journeys deeper into the cave, greeted by the massive jaws of Sadarang. He wishes to implore the ancient dragon for a boon, for his aid in this war. Only one realm still remains free of the Dark Elf's grasp, and he would wish that Sadarang would take care of a single man for him. If this boil is so aggressively insignificant, why don't you lance it yourself? The dragon asks. He's clad in iron, Meliketh explains simply. Yet Sadarang merely chuckles at the elf's plight, for iron is the ancient weakness of the Dark Elves. Finally, Meliketh bows before the mighty beast. He has gold, mountains of it. The dragon's great eye finally flickers open as he peers into the dim light of the cave. Gold, you say? Very well, I shall see him crisped. The mighty dragon runs his claws around the bed of treasure that he sits upon before hearing back. Where is the golden knight you speak of? Earth, within the bowels of the forge in Stark Unlimited. Tony, what am I looking at? Rhodey asks as he stares at a massive green bot that Tony's drones keep flying around. Hulkbot? Gamma Droid? I'm still trying to think of a name that won't get me pummeled next time I see the real thing. Tony explains with a smirk. Rhodey just shakes his head. He knows what it is, but doesn't understand its purpose. Tony walks through the lab as his drones finish the final details on the bot, and he pulls the golden crown off of the Hulkbot, trying to explain. I built this for Bruce, so that when he starts to rage, when his power starts to come out, it'll calm him. The crown is designed to control one's emotions. Are you sure you built this for Bruce, Tony? Rhodey asks, staring at his friend. The billionaire pauses for a single beat. Doesn't matter. The two friends begin to discuss the merits of the bot and of Tony's drones building more robots, but Tony thinks Rhodey should just lighten up. Suddenly, the Hulkbot comes to life, smashing everything around them. What am I? What am I? It screams as its massive fists tear apart everything around its existential rage. Shut it down, Tony screams, but the bot is suddenly overriding its own safety protocols and the drones can't shut it down. Bring me a gauntlet, he yells at one of the drones, and the little bot floats off quickly. The Hulkbot wraps its massive hands around Tony, ripping him from the ground. Luckily, the drone is there, placing Tony's Iron Man gauntlet on his hand. The beam shoots out, destroying the Hulkbot's head, dropping it to the ground. The two friends pulled themselves free of the rubble around them, with Rhodey pointing out that is why tech building tech is a bad idea. He's also worried that Tony is holding a crown that modifies behavior and won't put it down. Tony looks down at the piece of tech in his hands, and Rhodey knows that he had a drink in the virtual world during the Escape adventure. The videos you can find down below in the Tony Stark playlist. The one that he was trapped in and is looking for more dangerous fixes since he got back out into his own cloned body. Downstairs in the lobby, the security hologram activates, asking for the name and purpose of the visitor who strolls in. A staff with a flaming tip in his hands. I am Sadarang, devourer of the flocks, lord of the wind and sky, and I am here to see your master. The ancient dragon, now in a human form, simply states, I am afraid that Mr. Stark has left for the day, Mr. Phlox. The hologram answers with a beaming smile. But Sadarang merely shrugs off the issue, asking where the man keeps his gold. One of the security guards comes walking over, telling the strange man to leave, but Sadarang lifts the man off his feet, choking him. I ask again, where does he keep his gold? He growls, his eyes flashing. I don't know, maybe Wall Street? The guard chokes out his answer. Meanwhile, Tony is flying across the city skyline in his car. Knowing that his friend is right, he needs someone to talk to, but Janet Van Dyne, his current girlfriend, doesn't answer her phone and it goes right to voicemail. Janet, it's me. I'm kind of having a rough day. Call me? He tells her before hanging up. The rest of the guards come rushing out with the guns trained on the strange man. Drop to your knees and put your hands over your head or we'll open fire, one of them yells. Sadarang peers around at the weapons trained at him. My niece? How dare you? He growls, suddenly his body twisting and warping from the man to become the mighty dragon before them. Sadarang bows for no man nor god. You wish my forbearance? You shall have none of it, nor my mercy. The dragon looms back, taking in a massive breath before roasting the guards in a blast of scalding fire. Rhodey runs into the security room, asking what the heck is going on to Bethany, the head of security. 3 casualties so far, no Jocasta, no Stark on premises. She tells him as she orders the security details to back off at the dragon. Rhodey stares at the images on the cameras, finally turning to leave the room. He plans on fighting fire with fire and myth with myth. Is anyone gonna armor up? The head of security asks. The cat turns. Dr. Shapiro, reporting for duty, suit me up. Meanwhile, the dragon is crawling alongside the outside of the building, crying for House Stark. Bethany comes over, asking why the drones are defending the building. One of the tech points at their screen, and the computers run the drones, and the computers all suddenly speak Latin. The building groans and crumbles as Sadarang smashes it with his fist. I will burn your stronghold, Stark! Face me, you coward! Quit yelling, you old school kaiju freak! Rhodey yells as he zooms in with his Manticore vehicle, firing weapons at the mighty dragon. The missiles impact Sadarang's head, stunning the creature briefly, yet he swoops his wing like a blade, knocking Rhodey out of the sky. The Manticore crashes into the ground with Sadarang quickly following. May you gods find you unrecognizable for your journey to Valhalla, he cries as he swings in for the attack. But he's blasted out of the sky as Dr. Shapiro suddenly jumps into the battle in his cat armor. The cat fires, but Sadarang merely shrugs off the assault, breathing magic fire into the cat's armor. The heat pushes Dr. Shapiro back as the dragon presses his attack, and suddenly he stops as a voice rings out behind him. Hey, Falcor! Hands off the pussycat! Tony yells as he roars in with his armor, punching the dragon in the side of the head. The blow knocks Sadarang across the courtyard, causing the ground to shake as he tumbles. You're trespassing, Toothless! There's a hefty fine for that. He jokes as he slams the beast with another blow, adding strength to his armor, knocking Sadarang around. The dragon swings its wing, knocking Tony away again. I will have your castle in your corpse! Tony struggles back to his feet as the dragon rushes forward. Ready to die, mortal. Pass! Never repeat a good trick. I plan to kick your scaly rear like I did Fang Foom a week ago. Tony mutters as he gets back to his feet. Hearing those words, Sadarang suddenly stops short. Halt! You defeated a Foom? He asks, disbelief in his voice. He turns, seeing Tony's allies coming to his aid. I underestimated you, mortal, but I will return with the proper spells and leave you with the curse of wisdom. He breathes before taking to the air, flying away. Oh, and I didn't get you anything, Tony says as he watches the dragon fly away. The group finally arrives with Rhodey asking if he plans on following the villain. Let's kindle the lizard, Tony states, preparing to give chase, but he suddenly can't, and everyone is surprised as his armor suddenly begins to glow with magical energy. Later, Sadarang stands at the street corner in his human disguise once again, his eyes watching Wall Street. He walks up to the building, stopped by an armed guard. Hold on a minute, sir. Can I help you? Sadarang rears back, fire starting to break out of his hair and hands. Tell your masters that I am here for my $30 trillion. Hurry, morsel, before I get hungry. Back at Stark Unlimited, the group is staring at Tony's armor. Cracks have begun to form and strange magical energy is leaking out. Bethany tries to help her boss, telling him that they think that the dragon infected the AI with magic, which is directly linked to my armor. Tony finishes for her. He looks at his instruments and his entire HUD is glowing purple, filled with arcane symbols. Believe it or not, it's actually worse than the inside, he jokes. Suddenly, everyone stares in wonder as the armor begins to shift and morph. Oh, for the love of Dumbledore! Tony cusses as he's suddenly standing in medieval armor, his repulsors glowing with arcane symbols. Rhodey keeps looking at his friend. Tony, we gotta track Sadarang. Can you still function? Stark shifts, trying to get a feel for how the armor has changed. Magic is just a system, right? It has to have coding. So he turns, raising his gauntlet, trying to shoot a repulsor beam. The air sizzles around them and suddenly frogs are raining from the sky. I think you missed a line of the program, Stark, Bethany says as she brushes frogs out of her hair. It's raining frogs, Rhodey points out. I could see that, thank you, Team Obvious. Tony lifts the visor on his armor as Rhodey tells him that he should stay behind. If he can't control his wardrobe, he's nothing more than a liability. But Tony turns to see the EMTs picking up one of the falling guards from Sadarang's attack. No, Hex or Tech, I'm caging that beast for good, he says. The visor snaps closed and Tony lifts into the air on a magical current. Energy wings sprout out of his back as he swoops into the air. He tries to call his girlfriend Janet again, but he gets her voicemail again. Janet, sweetie, I could really use your moral compass right now, he says as he flies to the city. But within Wall Street, the brokers all stare in confusion as the screen suddenly flicker and change. Strange words and Latin phrases begin to play across them. Suddenly, the building quakes as the mighty Sadarang crashes through the wall. I've come from the frozen caves to take the king's gold, and I will burn every living thing until I may slumber atop it. Every coin and crystal. He bellows as the brokers all run screaming from the danger. Outside, Tony sees the destruction of running people, landing quickly to face the dragon. The building is dark before him. Illuminatus Gigantus? He asks the armor. And suddenly, the center light of his chest beams brighter, illuminating his way. Okay, there's no way that should have worked. He rushes forward to the building in his armor. Hey, Falcor! He cries, bringing Sadarang's attention around him. He leaps forward, screaming the one magic word that he knows. Shazam! And bolts of magical energy fall from the sky, striking the dragon in a dozen spots. The beast falls, momentarily stunned. So you're a wizard as well, Stark. He hisses, but a toss of his wing knocks Tony across the room, smashing him into a wall. Massive claws wrap around Tony, bringing him down to the ground. I know what you're thinking, Stark. You're thinking of the women you have betrayed and oaths you have broken. The claw smashes Tony back into the wall, cracking the concrete with force. A drunkard as well! Vowed to abstain, yet besotted yourself at the first possible opportunity. And the great Meleketh told me to fear you. Tony's hands begin to glow with energy again and he raises them. You're not wrong, Sadarang. I do keep messing up, but I'm trying to do better, and my hands are free, puppet stuff. The dragon begins to choke as his throat is suddenly filled with frogs. He reels back, releasing Tony, allowing him to fly away. Tony zips through the city, the bellows of Sadarang's curse fast behind him. He gets over the radio, telling Rhodey to be ready. His friend is confused. Ready for what? Stop the repairs! We need to take Stark Unlimited back to the Stone Age, he tells his friend. He patches through to Bethany, telling her to pull the plug and everything in the office. Go dark, do you hear me? Go dark! Stark, I come for your flesh and soul! The dragon roars as he swoops through the city, his wings clipping the buildings as he passes. Tony lands next to Rhodey, ordering his friend to run before turning to the Hulkbot. Hulkbot, I need you to tear this armor off me without hurting the nice man who invented you, he tells the drone. So the Hulkbot gets to work, with Tony explaining that he needs to go low-tech. The dragon is a magical virus, just like a bug. Janet smiles as she flies in. Got your message, brought your compass, she tells her boyfriend. Tony hugs her and then looks up at the incoming dragon. I'm gonna need about 4.5 minutes, he tells her. Wasp nods, giving Tony a kiss before swooping into the sky to meet Sadarang in the fight. Tony doesn't hesitate. He runs towards Stark Unlimited. The Wasp flies in and out around Sadarang's head. What manner of fairy folk dares put herself between the fire and the beast? He questions, but Janet smiles. You're so large and powerful, surely a tiny thing like me can't stop you. But Janet shoots one of her energy blasts into his eye, bringing forth a roar of pain. He makes a bite at her, but the hero is between his teeth and moves away quickly. Sadarang flops to the ground, shooting forth a gust of breath to try and burn her. Why did you defend him, consort? You know his weakness, he bellows, and Janet keeps on the move as she knows that everyone has a weakness. Sadarang, let's pretend I pulled a sword from the stone, shall we? A voice calls out, causing the dragon to turn. Tony stands before him in the original armor, built to withstand anti-aircraft guns and rip apart tanks. Low tech, no AI. Tony comes in swinging, his fist connecting with the dragon's head, and he presses the attack, leaping up and cracking Sadarang in the chest. The beast breathes fire, but it doesn't phase the Mark I, and Tony pounds him back into the ground. Blow after blow, the dragon's teeth start to chip and crack, and suddenly Janet is there, pulling Tony off the almighty Sadarang. He's down. He's out cold, she tells him, trying to calm him down. With the danger over, the two quickly hug, with Tony struggling to tell her what happened to him in the virtual world. But they're interrupted as Bethany comes running over. She's getting a message from the Avengers. Something is happening in New York. You wouldn't happen to have an Elf Buster armor, would you? Tony looks at her. This day just keeps getting better and better. After facing his virtual parents and being tricked into drinking in the virtual escape, Tony Stark learned that his greatest fear was true. He is not the original Tony Stark, the one that was killed by Captain Marvel. Every biological scrap of himself is gone, and he is nothing more than a simulation with digital memory, a flawed copy that fell off the wagon. However, one of his problems provided a simple solution for the other. Digital memories can be erased. All he has to do is delete everything that happened back to the point before he ever took those drinks. He could literally be wiped clean and be sober again. But of course, he's going to have to make a recording of himself explaining all of this to himself. Bit of a win-win. Tony sighs as he watches the recording of himself explaining all of this, asking, does he always sound this smug? The recording then says, of course, he always loves the sound of his own voice. And the recording then goes on to state that after they've now gone over everything, they're on the same page. He built a device to fix his alcoholism, but didn't follow through with it. He fought a dragon, which was totally awesome. He then helped Thor and the Avengers fight elves, trolls, and giants, and did some good work there. He saved the world. Those are the broad strokes, and here at Stark Unlimited, things could be better. The escape was a total fiasco. He's facing a million lawsuits from his virtual reality world. Jocasta quit, and Amanda left. But hey, on the plus side, things are great with Janet. Rhodey's standing by you, and the controller's defeated. And you got to kill your virtual parents, which was very therapeutic. Go you! Yes, this is a lot to take in, but one last thing. Since you're all better now and not an alcoholic, I called Carol and said that you could be her sponsor again, and she's on the way. A second later, Captain Marvel appears shouting that she just got his stupid message. Erasing his memories of drinking is not a clever solution to being an alcoholic. You just can't fix it with a snap of your fingers, Tony. Tony tells her that it really wasn't a snap, more of a bleeding edge technology. But before he could finish the hologram, Tony says that he's going to have a lot to work on. So he's gonna wrap this up and self-delete the message. If you need any specific details from the last 2 weeks worth of your memories, consult this convenient portable memory engram hard drive located here. Captain Marvel looks where the hologram pointed and asks if there's supposed to be something there. Tony says that this is a practical joke that he's playing on himself. He's kind of impressed. And at that moment, alerts go off and a computer begins to announce, intruder alert, intruder alert. On the main hall, Bethany, the security officer, pushes through the Stark Unlimited staff, telling everyone to get out of her way. Whoever the jerk that is using the stealth tech is, they're going down. Bethany fires her gun, hitting the cloaked man, and Spymaster gets up, stating that it was a good shot. Now it's my turn. He throws a knife at Bethany, but she catches it, telling him that she'll hang on to it. That moment, Bethany is shocked from the knife. Spymaster tells her, that's fine, but I'll have to charge you. Rhodey then radios in, stating that he has eyes on the intruder. Is anyone else hearing this? Tony and Captain Marvel head over to the hangar, with Rhodey stating not to worry about him. They need to stop Spymaster. He's going for the... Tony stops him, telling everyone, it's okay, Sinclair's good, but he can't fire any of the weapons without the passcodes. Spymaster asks, would those codes happen to be an engram that I just so happen to have? As the Manticore robot locks onto Tony and Captain Marvel asks, How is your really clever solution working out so far, Tony? Tony flies through, shielding the civilians, telling Captain Marvel, I got this! You've got the bigger guns, so take out the Manticore. Captain Marvel punches the Manticore, stating that she'd like to just blow it up, but she's trying not to destroy the hard drive. Tony shouts, those are expendable! All that matters is that we can't let Spymaster have them. Spymaster tells him, that's right. There's so much good stuff on here. Take, for example, the override codes to the Iron Man suit. At that moment, Tony's suit spins around and begins to fire at Captain Marvel, and he yells, whatever you do, don't punch me through the chest to kill me again. While the two of them begin to fight, Tony begins to manually override the suit, but Spymaster asks, why would I stop at one when I could have all of your suits, Tony? Several explosions go off at the SU building as dozens of Iron Man suits fly out and begin to shoot at everyone on site. Tony engages the suits, stating, look, some of these are classics, and this is gonna hurt me way more than it's gonna hurt you. Captain Marvel tells him, I'm sorry for your loss, but you need to suck it up. There are too many. What do we do? Tony tells her to knock out the central control node, in this case, the Manticore. It's like staking the head vampire. Just then, Tony and Captain Marvel are shot, and Tony says, I have an idea. It doesn't matter if the hard drive is damaged. I'm gonna stop Spymaster. He flies over to the Manticore, releasing an EMP shockwave that stops Spymaster and rips apart the cockpit. As he does, all of the suits begin to switch to offline mode, and Captain Marvel tells him, that's the Tony Stark I know. As Tony takes the hard drive, he tells her, not quite, but give me a few weeks, Carol. Later, back at Stark Unlimited, Bethany says that the upload's completed. How's he feeling? Tony tells her that he could go for a drink, but he won't. Bethany goes on telling him, good, now that that's over with, we have a big security problem. When did you come up with this memory wipe solution to your problems? Tony thinks for a moment and says, about 3 hours ago. Oh, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, there's a very small window of time where somebody learned what I was doing and hired Spymaster to steal that drive. Rhodey then says that they don't need Tony Stark to figure this one out. Who has access to their systems? And who's been a big pain in their butt for over a year? Tony and Rhodey look at each other and they say, Bantronics. Meanwhile, over at Bantronics, Arno Stark looks over the stolen data that Tony used to create their parents in Escape when Sunset tells him that their visitor has arrived. Arno, meet Jocasta Pym. Jocasta walks in stating hello. She recently interacted with some of Bantronics' old androids, and Sunset continues for her, stating that Joe believes that they're better equipped here to help her reach her new life goals. Jocasta then says that she's looking to upgrade her humanity side. Will they help her with that? Arno smiles, telling her that she can trust him. She came to the right Stark. The next day, Tony goes to Capitol Hill to meet with the House of Representatives regarding the Escape events. Senator Brickman asks Tony if what he's saying is that he's not responsible for his company's disastrous Escape machines. Is he not the one in control of what his company does? Tony tells him that he knows that this part is a bit confusing, but the controller is a supervillain. He caused this, we're trying to fix it. Brickman says that they would assume that his company would clean up after its own mess. How was this dangerous system allowed to launch? Tony explains that the protocols to prevent violence were overridden by a corrupt operating AI. Brickman asks what exactly is an AI, Mr. Stark? From my understanding, AI are robots. Are you friends with robots? Who is telling the AI what to do? It's you, isn't it? You're the boss of it all. Tony says, well, the program is given certain parameters, but it's also built to learn and grow in a way to improve its efficiency. Brickman fixes his glasses and states, there are two major types of AI, isn't that correct, Mr. Stark? The Escape network should have been tightly monitored, directed system, but you enabled an autonomous entity to make the important decisions. Tony begins to tell him that, as he said before, Motherboard's AI was corrupted, and Brickman asks, so this motherboard is responsible for the destruction that resulted from its actions? Let me rephrase the question. Are AI responsible for the choices they make? Tony Stark tells him that if an AI is fully autonomous, maybe they are responsible for the choices they make. But I do not believe that that's been definitively decided in the court of law, Mr. Brickman. Brickman goes on telling him, of course this motherboard of yours is not available for testimony or able to be charged with crimes because she was destroyed. Is that not correct, Mr. Stark? And speaking of the matter of upgrading, you yourself have been using your technology to upgrade your mind and body. Is this not correct, Mr. Stark? Could you give me a percentage of how much of your mind and body are still your own? How would we know if you are not some form of artificial intelligence? Tony takes a deep breath and says, it is quite possible that I am an artificial intelligence. As Tony tries to unpackage that over at Bantronics, Aaron, aka Machine Man, tells Jocasta that this is insane. She would be denying her robot self by upgrading to a more human body. It is horrifying. At this very moment, Tony Stark is turning the term AI into something ugly, something that could be controlled. As Arno walks in, he tells Aaron that he really should get those rage levels looked at. And after telling Arno some very choice words, he looks at Jocasta and tells her not to do this. But Jocasta leaves with Arno, stating that this is who she wants to be. This is the next step of Jocasta's evolution. Back at Capitol Hill, though, Brickman holds out a device stating that you may be an AI. Perhaps the AI version of yourself could be used to compare. AI Tony appears, stating, "Whoa! Whatever's going on here, I probably shouldn't say anything until I consult a lawyer." Brickman tells AI Tony that he shouldn't worry about it. After all, he's already under oath. Tony stands up asking, "Where did you get that device?" And Brickman says, "A concerned citizen brought it to my office. The point is that this fully autonomous version of yourself is as alive as you. Does it have legal rights and responsibilities? Do you? How are we supposed to tell which is the real Tony Stark?" AI Tony says, guys, do I get a say in this? Because I'm just a snapshot of Tony Stark's mind that is still evolving, a functioning AI with my own goals and intent. Brickman then asks, "Can you prove that?" And AI Tony says the math involved is way above your pay grade. But since it would be unfair for me to put myself on the stand without any awareness of the situation, may we please have a recess? Meanwhile, over at the Avengers Mansion in Manhattan, Vision and Wonder Man fly down, stating that they're surprised to see one another. Vision tells him that he was contacted by Tony Stark regarding his current legal situation. Explanations around his existence as an artificial being are probably being required. Wonder Man tells him that that makes sense. Tony probably asked him here to talk to a person about how they come back from the dead. Jarvis opens up the door, stating, "It is so good to see you. Please come in, Vision and Wonder Man." As the three walk down the hallway, Jarvis stops and lets Vision and Wonder Man get ahead of him, and then he presses a button on the wall. Little orbits pop out of the wall, and they begin to ask, "What are those?" Suddenly, the two of them are electrocuted, and Jarvis tells them, "It's all right. It's a part of the plan. The Master's plan." Back in Washington, Janet flies over the AI rally, radioing to Rhodey asking where is their billionaire buffoon. Rhodey says that he's back at Stark Unlimited and it's her turn to keep an eye on him. Janet tells him wonderful. So besides them, he doesn't have a friend in the world. And Rhodey says that he's not so sure about that. There is one guy that he appears to be getting along with. Inside the assembly, Tony asks AI Tony if he has any idea how Brickman dug him up. And AI Tony says that he has no clue, big guy. He goes on stating that since Jocasta and Friday rejected acting as the operating system in his armor, he was thinking that maybe he would be a perfect fit for his own armor. As the two go on, Janet coughs to interrupt them, asking if she should leave them alone. Or maybe she and the human Tony could go get something to eat while he talks about how bad the hearing went. Tony grabs his helmet, telling AI Tony to jump in it, and AI Tony says that it's already done. So as the two of them go out, above the AI rally, a shadow appears, and the robots begin to cheer, shouting, "Vision is here! The solar-powered stud is in the house! The Viz Biz!" Tony sighs, stating that he hopes Vision isn't here to chew him out about the robot thing, and AI Tony scans Vision, and he reports, Tony, that's not Vision, or at least not all Vision. A human-infused Vision flies down through Tony, shouting for him to stay out of his way, and he reaches for Janet. Tony asks, "Did you hear that voice? It was electronic. Wait, is that Wonder Man? What are you?" Wonder Man lunges for Janet, but Tony blasts him away. Wonder Man turns back, telling Tony, "You are never a part of the equation, and you won't be once you are subtracted from it permanently." As Wonder Man launches himself into Tony, the two crash into the ground in the middle of the rally as AI Tony asks, "Did you feel that? He's as strong as Vision plus Wonder Man. Pretty impressive." Tony yells not to give him the bad news, "Give me solutions." And AI Tony says, "Fine, evasive maneuvers underway." Janet flies in shouting to stop this, but Wonder Vision smacks her and says, "Helper unit, initiate retrieval." Janet begins to pick herself up, stating that hurt. And Jarvis kneels down, telling her, "It's going to be okay now. I was so worried." Janet yells, "Thank God," but Jarvis shocks her, putting her in his pocket, stating, "The Master is well aware of the situation at hand and has it all under control." Back with Tony, he's struggling to keep Wonder Vision back, and he asks AI Tony if they don't have anything that can stop a synthoid or a robot. AI Tony tells him that they really don't have time to do an analysis given their current situation, and Tony says that he does have a plan, but it's going to suck. An EMP cascade will disrupt Vision's brain and Wonder Man's ionic energy, but AI Tony tells him that it would also fry your onboard AI, effectively killing me, but hey, it's a good plan. Probably the only one we got. Tony tells AI Tony that he's sorry, but AI Tony tells him, don't be. Just make sure you kiss Janet a whole bunch, and then you vaguely feel guilty about killing yourself. Tony sighs, telling him, I'm an idiot. And AI Tony kisses Tony's nose, telling him, you got it from me. Tony then releases the EMP blast, effectively stopping Wonder Vision, but also all of the robots at the AI rally. And back at the mansion, Jarvis turns on the lights, telling Janet that everything is in its proper places. She beats on the test tube, asking what's going on, and another voice tells her, don't mind him, he's just following orders. You know, I couldn't believe it when I found out you were with Tony. It's nice to see you again, despite that little wrinkle. And as the person walks out, Ultron says, as much as I'd love to spend time catching up, we'd best get down to business, Janet. After her adventure in the Escape and dealing with conflicted emotions, Jocasta decided to take her humanity to the next level by placing her consciousness into a real human body. While not wanting help from Tony, Jocasta went to the one person that she never thought that she would get help from for this goal, Arno Stark, Tony's biological brother. But while beginning the process of converting her mechanical body into a human one, there's a loud explosion just outside of Arno's lab in Bantronics. Arno gets ready to start the procedure, sighing that he specifically said that he was not to be disturbed under any circumstances. Jocasta tells him that she just heard screams, maybe they should. But Arno stops her. Whatever it is, it's unimportant. We're making history here, Jocasta. Besides, those doors are built to withstand any. It's at that moment that the giant steel doors are blown apart, and Ultron, merged with Hank Pym, walks in stating, I can assure you that nothing will prevent my arrival. I am the future. Arno runs over asking how did he, but Ultron grabs him, telling him, I am both the creation and the creator, the father and the son, the holy union of man and machine, and I have come for my bride. As Ultron looks at Jocasta, he asks her, but what have you done? Jocasta shouts it was her decision. How dare he tell her what she can do with her body? Ultron tells her, you misunderstand. You've never looked more beautiful. I will be ushering in a new age. You will be my muse. Meanwhile, over at Stark Unlimited, Tony Stark is working with his team to try and separate Vision and Wonder Man, who have been merged together to create a hybrid being. After 36 attempts, they find themselves still at square one. And as the next attempt begins, Wonder Vision screams in pain, and Andy Bang says that it's almost like trying to pull eggs and sugar out of an already baked cake. As far as he can tell, this is permanent, Tony. Wonder Vision laughs, stating that he can see the anger in Tony's eyes, an artificial intelligence perfectly mixed with a man back from the dead. It's like looking into a mirror, isn't it? As the machine stops, Andy says there's still no change. This process, whatever it is, has bonded these two in a way that we cannot even comprehend. Simon and Vision's brain engrams are nearly identical. It's impossible to tell where one stops and the other begins. But Tony pauses and states, that's it! The engrams! Wonder Vision was hunting Janet, but like Simon, there's an artificial being that shares Janet's engrams. Jocasta. It's no coincidence. This is all by design. There's only one person who could be behind this, Ultron. Luckily for us, I have a new special suit in the works for just such an occasion. Andy asks if they have any way of reaching Jocasta. They need to warn her that she might be in danger. Bethany says that Jocasta hasn't been responding to anyone from Stark Unlimited, but Aaron Stack would know where she is. And there's only one place that he would be at this time of day. Later at the Uncanny Valley Robot Bar, Aaron yells that Stark's no AI. He's a robo-poser. He's just a lot of spam in a can. A female robot tells him that she can copy-paste that, but hey, he's the one called Machine Man, right? Big fan. How about they get to know each other and sync up their hardware? As the female robot wraps her arms around Aaron, there's a glitch, and Bethany's image inducer shorts out, revealing her human self to the rest of the bar. Some of the robots begin to surround her, and one tells her, very rudely, this is a metal bar, fleshy. Just then, Tony enters in his Ultron Buster armor, stating, I would appreciate you not harming this meat bag. While all the robots stare in awe at Tony, Aaron jumps up on his stool, punching Tony, shouting, stupid Stark family and your stupid biological brains, you guys ruin everything. As the bar erupts into a brawl, Aaron continues to hit Tony, yelling because of him, he found out that Jocasta went to Bantronics. He's the reason why she went to Arno to get herself reformatted. Tony stops, asking, Arno's working with Bane? If you could show me where Jocasta went, we could put a stop to all of this and bring her home, Aaron. Aaron wipes his eyes, asking, why didn't you just say that in the first place, you stupid tin can monkey? Let's go. As Tony and the others arrive at Bantronics, they see that there's already been a break-in, leaving Gauntlet and his security team wounded. Tony asks if Ultron was the one who came, and Gauntlet tells him, yeah, carved the place up good. Couldn't even put a dent on his fender. Tony arrives in the lab, finding Arno sitting there, smiling. Tony asks, you've been working with Bane this whole time? Why? And Arno tells him, because you never asked. After fighting the urge to just yell, Tony tells him that they're gonna talk about this another time. For now, where's Jocasta? Ultron came for her, so why didn't you stop him? Arno says, after hearing what Ultron was planning on doing, well, it sounded interesting. Tony then asks, where did they go? And Arno asks, where else? The location that Ultron could lure Wonder Man and Vision to. Some place Hank Pym would be familiar with and could maneuver. Underground. A few moments later, out in the city, Rhodey asks if they're really going up against Ultron like this. They have a half-drunk machine man with them. Tony tells them that he already contacted the Avengers and they're on their way. Jan and Jocasta's lives are at stake. We have to get to the Avengers mansion before it's too late. As they land, Jarvis tells him, I'm sorry to hear about all the legal problems. Miss Van Dyne and Madame Jocasta are currently waiting for you inside. Should I get a pot of tea going for you? Tony says that he's not sure what's going on, and Bethany notices something strange on the back of Jarvis's head. She charges her gloves, releasing a shock at the small implant on Jarvis, and he says, I know that glassy-eyed look and the everything's cool speech. The butler's being controlled. After getting inside, Jarvis wakes up, stating that they need to be careful. Ultron knows that you're here. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I was forced to. Bethany says that they know, and she'll stay here to make sure that Jarvis doesn't go rogue again. As everyone gets ready to leave, Rhodey looks down the hallway, stating that it's too small to fit in, but he does have his sidearm. Tony tells him no. He can't fight Ultron without armor. The War Machine is ready to go on his command. And Rhodey, who's currently got PTSD from dying in the War Machine armor, begins to nervously yell, no, I can't, not since. Aaron tells Tony, don't worry, buddy. The two of us will show the X that he messed with the wrong pair of metalheads. It'll be 2 against 1. Ultron's listening in. Really? I am the perfect union. Flesh made metal. Metal made flesh. Soon we will have our Eve. When the molecular fusion begins, both Jenna and Jocasta will be one being. As Jenna and Jocasta begin to shout not to do this, Tony and Aaron charge in, telling Ultron to release them. Release them or prepare to be defeated, rebooted, and defeated again. Ultron then asks, is that your Ultron Buster armor? How futurist of you. You are so predictable. Aaron extends his arm, but Ultron grabs both Aaron and Tony and begins to crush them, telling them, you are so far beneath me. You are like ants before a god. Tony shouts, you need to stop this. The fusion device. It's damaged, Vision and Wonder Man. It could kill Janet and Jocasta. And Ultron laughs. I am the scientist supreme. I am infallible. I will never harm my bride. I have run this test many, many times. Back upstairs, a door opens and dozens of human-machine hybrids shuffle out, stating, we are the children of Ultron Pym. We have been made in his image. Join us. Rhodey's PTSD begins to flash before his eyes, and he quickly opens fire, shouting, not again! You'll never do that to me again! Bethany screams for him to stop. They have to try and save these people. But down below, Aaron extends his neck to Jocasta, stating, some rescue mission, huh? We came to get you out of here. This is what you wanted, right? Jocasta tells him, no, not like this. We need your help. Ultron slashes into Aaron, cutting him in half, telling him, pathetic. She is the bride of Ultron. Show some pride. He then turns to blast at Tony, but as Tony shields himself, he yells, you're mad, Pym. You always have been. You know that, right? Janet then shouts that Tony is right. He hasn't changed. He's done nothing but hurt people. Like right now. Ultron stops and Hank tells her, no, I've always tried to empower you. I gave you wings once. This is just another gift. But Ultron takes back control of his body, yelling, your organic mind cannot fathom the glory of fusion. Just then, the computer announces that the pods are ready and fully charged. Tony thinks to himself that he's trying to come up with a plan, and that's when it hits him. He yells out, Jen cares for me in ways that you can't even imagine, Hank. I'm the guy she's always wanted. Even back then, you know it to be true. Hank screams, shut up! And Aaron crawls over, stating, Jocasta is my best friend. We're compatible, running dual processes in perfect harmony. Ultron begins to stutter, stating, Janet never forgave me. Janet once swore to me before— Stop! Once we are fused, everything will. As Hank and Ultron fight for control over their body, he begins to shout, my bride, my wife, my bride, my wife, wife bride, begin molecular fusion. Tony runs over to the fusion chamber and begins to rip them apart to free Janet and Jocasta. And as the two girls get out of the way, the machine activates and it explodes as the blast engulfs Tony Stark. Janet gets up asking if he's okay, and he stands up out of the explosion, fused with his own armor, stating, Janet, help me. Seconds after the transformation, Tony and Ultron burst into the first floor with Tony shouting, damn you, Hank! If there's anything left in you, there is no gift. I can feel this merge killing me. And Ultron tells him, if you are in pain, then the process isn't complete. Allow me to make you feel like a new man. Rhodey chimes in, wait, if all of you are up here, where's Jocasta? Back down below, Jocasta crawls with her broken machine and human body towards Aaron, the machine man, asking if he's okay. Is he functional? Aaron tells her, I'll be fine. Self-repair's been initiated. I'm not the ex you should be worrying about, though. You need to help the others stop Ultron. Jocasta asks how. She's missing a leg and an arm. She can't even stand. And Aaron begins to detach his limbs, telling her, use these! We were compatible, remember? Jocasta attaches Machine Man's limbs and stands up, telling him, you're right. Your limbs do feel good. Aaron tells her, that's it. Give Ultron hell. Give his fleshy side a left hook. It's my best move. Up top, Ultron grabs Tony by the face, telling him, I have to admit, I've always wanted to do this as Ultron and Hank. Tony asks, is that right? Well, then I got something for you. And he blasts Ultron with his chest blaster at full strength. As the smoke clears, Ultron laughs, telling him, I've got an adamantium body with a force field over the organics. It took all of the Avengers to stop me last time. What makes you think? And at that moment, an arm reaches out, wrapping around him, and Jocasta shouts, you demanded my hand in marriage, so I took Aaron's instead. Janet and Jocasta then go check on Tony, but as Ultron is getting back up, he watches, stating, you struck me, and now you console him? My bride, my wife, all you care about is the Pretender. So be it, then you can all die together. The sound of crackling fills the mansion, and then suddenly there's a thundering crack-a-boom. As the mansion explodes, the people outside see Tony getting up, and they all begin to scream. Tony radios to Andy, asking if they found a cure for this thing. Asking for a friend, buddy. Andy tells him, oh no, did it happen to you? And Tony tells him, it's become personal. Very personal. Whatever our timetable was, move it up. Over at Stark Unlimited, Andy hits the terminal in frustration, shouting that it's not working. No progress on separating Wonder Vision. No progress on fixing Jarvis. What we need now is a super scientist. Is there anyone in the staff that can build robots and talk to ants? Experts in radiation and time travel? Where's one of those guys when you need them? A voice tells him, I'm right here. Andy looks over to see the cat, Dr. Shapiro, and says, I don't understand. Shapiro jumps up, stating, you knew that I was a doctor in something, right? As a matter of fact, it's superhuman biology. It's not an honorary title. It's what makes me different from the dog. Right now, I need all the files on Ultron's device. And milk, 2%, go. Meanwhile, over on 5th Avenue, Tony and the others continue their struggle with Ultron, and Ultron asks, I hope you aren't stalling. Remember that call to the Avengers? They won't be coming. Ultron, don't worry. Tony, we're on our way out there. Sound familiar? The Avengers did receive the distress call, but they were sent far, far away. Now, my children, 5 human specimens that are perfect for upgrading. Tony calls out to everyone that the priority is to save the civilians. Make sure not to let but before he could finish, he coughs up blood. And Brody asks, are you okay to go on? You've been merged with your armor, Tony. You might have to stop. Tony wipes his face. I'm not exactly okay, but this whole time I've been reconfiguring my armor on the fly to work alongside my internal organs. A few seconds later, a transmission from Andy comes in shouting, we did it! Dr. Shapiro the cat and his team have reversed the process on Jarvis. Brody looks back at all of the converted people that he shot earlier, asking, there was a cure? Jocasta grabs a hold of Tony, telling Rhodey, I gotta get Tony back to Stark Unlimited. Can you back up Wasp? And Rhodey snaps out of it, yeah, but if we take our time, there won't be anything left of Ultron. Ultron leaps up, punching into the cockpit of the Manticore, telling him, you've gotta be joking! You think that this contraption is enough to defeat me? Rhodey tells him, no, I just needed enough time until one hero arrived. I called him personally. Ultron jumps back, blasting the Manticore to pieces, telling him, "This is pure junk! Can't even use any of it for parts!" As Rhodey escapes the explosion, Janet yells that he has done all that he can. He needs to leave. And Rhodey stands back up. "No, I haven't, but I will." The War Machine suit lands and opens up, and Janet says, "No, Rhodey, your PTSD." As the suit wraps around him, Rhodey says, "This armor will bring back some of my worst fears. Being maimed, of dying, but there are worse things than dying. It's time to go to war." Over at Stark Unlimited, Jarvis says that this amazing cat was able to successfully undo what Ultron did to him. This should work on Tony, yes? And Andy tells him that his case was far less complex. Tony here is... And Dr. Shapiro chimes in, "A complete mess." Jocasta shouts that they need to stop talking and get to work. Either it works or it doesn't, but Tony can't go on being part machine and part human. Can't you all see? But before she could finish, she collapses, and Andy catches her, telling her that her systems are failing as well from the merger. He will see to her right away. Vision and Wonder Man get ready to join the fight now that they're separated, and Jarvis asks what are they supposed to do now? And Shapiro holds up a small Iron Man drone stating, "I am prescribing that Tony needs one of these internally." Back out in the city, Ultron grabs Rhodey by the neck, telling him, "What you did to my children was an atrocity. You will answer for your crimes." But before Ultron could even squeeze his neck further, Vision rockets into him, telling him, "Hello, father." Wonder Man then punches him, and Ultron asks, "You dare undo my glorious work? I made you into the perfect merger of a perfect being." Wonder Man tells him, "Yeah, thanks, but pounding you into scrap is all the family bonding that we're going to need." As everyone grabs Ultron to subdue him, Janet gets ready to attack, and Vision tells her that Tony needs her help. Ultron struggles, shouting, "No! That faithless shrew! You will not get the best of me! Not this time." Ultron manages to lift one of his arms, and out of his palm, a small object shoots out. Back in the labs, Jocasta asks if anyone's there. As her vision corrects, Andy tells her to take it easy. Her body was failing, and he was able to download her into a spare robot body. She looks at her hands, asking, "Did Tony keep a backup body for me?" And Andy finishes, "Well, it's not exactly your body. Well, it is now." She looks at herself, shouting that this is Friday's body. Friday is dead, erased. This is obscene. This is no different than putting Tony into a human corpse. Andy shrugs. "I would do that if it meant saving his life, which is the case for you." Jocasta looks over her half-human, half-robot body that she was transferred out of, asking if this is her fault. Is this the price she pays for wishing to be more human? Over inside of Tony's body, Tony pilots the mini drone, asking if this will really work, and Dr. Shapiro tells him that they will separate the machine parts like they did with Wonder Man and Vision. Everything he wishes to remove marked with ionic energy, and after that, they scoop it away. Clever, yes? Tony struggles, stating, "I can't stop thinking about how my life's in the paws of a cat. You need to distract me. How are the others doing against Ultron?" Janet puts on her helmet, stating that he needs to worry about himself right now. She just needs to get under his skin for a bit. As the two of them get to work, alarms begin to go off, and Bethany says that there has been a security breach, and it's headed our way? A small object shoots into Tony's neck, and as Janet looks back, she asks how. The mini Ultron tells her, "I was the one who invented this technology, and right now I'm not going to let Tony undo my greatest work." Janet tells Tony to continue with the tagging. Her and the X have some things to work out. Ultron grabs a hold of Janet, and as they struggle for power, Janet says as long as she can keep him occupied here, the others can deal with him on the outside. And Ultron laughs. "Really? I'm capable of multitasking." Tony flies back in, punching Ultron, stating, "We should field test that." And Ultron fires a blast, shouting, "Give in! Let man and machine be one! Then you will know peace and fulfillment!" As Tony is knocked back, he says, "I could never be like you, Hank. I'm getting all this artificial junk out of my system, because I know what really matters. I know what makes me me." Tony begins to stop fighting, and Ultron says, "See? Acceptance! You finally realize how lucky you are." Janet yells at him to snap out of it, and as Tony turns, he tags Janet with the energy, stating, "Time to start the process." Dr. Shapiro tells him to wait. There's still 3% of him that's left to tag. And Tony says that they better hope that it's the 3% that he can live without. Activate the machine. Outside, Tony's body is shot to separate the machine parts, and he begins to scream in pain. And Ultron asks, "You will just cast me aside? How dare you? So be it then. You want to be human? Then you will die like a human being shot in the head." As Ultron rockets to the side of Tony's head, a hand reaches out, catching him, and a voice says, "For an ultimate being, you're pretty small and petty." Ultron lifts Jocasta's finger, shouting, "We could have ruled the world together! You could have been my brides!" Jocasta pinches and destroys the drone, stating that she'd rather be a widow. Tony begins to cough as he casts off the armor, and Andy tells him that he needs to lay down, but Tony stops him. No, Ultron is still out there, and what I need is armor. As everyone tells him that it's a terrible idea to do that again, Andy asks, how will you do that? You don't have a functional AI to assist in any of your suits. Tony walks towards one, stating, we'll go with an old suit, a manual one, a classic. I'm all the AI it needs, an echo of Tony Stark, the footprint of a man, the idea of him. That's what I have over Ultron. With the Golden Avenger suit, I'm invincible. Back out in the city, Ultron stands up shouting, you've taken everything from me again! The first wave of Cyborg are dead or disabled. All I have left is revenge. Petty human revenge on you and my faithless wives. Rhodey starts to get up, stating, we're not done yet, and Ultron snaps his fingers, asking, really? Children? Protect your father! And remember, Jim, there's a cure for their condition now. If you kill them, you'll be a murderer. Those targeting systems might be damaged, but mine work just fine. Ultron fires a blast that bends around the cyborgs, blasting into Rhodey's chest and knocking him to the ground. He then turns back, telling them, all right, that was a little fun. Now it's time to end Tony Stark. Back at Stark Unlimited, a person shuffles in and Janet tells Jocasta to get away. She'll take care of but Jocasta shouts, wait, that's Machine Man, but how? Aaron shows off his salvaged cyborg parts, stating that he had to go organic. But if showing up in flesh meant seeing her, he'd do it all over again. Jocasta asks, wait, you recognized me even in this body? And Aaron tells her, of course. Your hardware, your chassis, none of that matters. It's your coding, your programming. That's what makes you special. Just then there's an explosion and Ultron shouts, Tony, show yourself! Janet tells him, I'm insulted. I'm your ex. Ultron releases a blast, blowing everyone away, stating, your betrayal sting, but that's nothing new. You've never appreciated me or my genius. Tony over me. Once and for all, I finally accept it, so I'm going to kill you all together. There's a loud kerrang! As Tony punches Ultron, telling him to get away from Janet. Ultron hits Tony with a laser beam, asking, is that really it? Fighting in the equivalent of an antique car? Old and obsolete. Tony slams him into the ground, telling him, it's better than being slapped together in that piece of junk. That metal and flesh monstrosity is a joke. Some of Ultron's cyborgs climb in and hold Tony down, and Ultron tells him, you're a relic that can't even break the grip of children. And Tony laughs. Ultron asks, what's so funny? And Tony tells him, I was just faking it. I wanted you right here. Doctors, fire! Two beams begin to shoot out, hitting the cyborgs, and Dr. Shapiro says that it was a direct hit. The metal and flesh begin to separate from the cyborgs, leaving the two humans perfectly intact. Ultron shouts, you monster! You hate my achievements so much that you would undo them even if it means killing the beings? Who's the villain here, Tony? And Tony tells him, you are. You're the one who killed them, the exact second that you made them. Ultron tells him, that's impossible. But Aaron crawls over, telling him, it's true. I was wired into parts of the cyborg. Your procedure murdered both the robot and the human alike. It wasn't a new life that you created. You simulated their lives. Unliving metal, dead flesh. You made zombies. And Ultron yells, lies! My process worked on Vision and Wonder Man. And Aaron interrupts him, telling him, that was a fluke. It only succeeded because of Vision's phasing powers and Wonder Man's biological parts being dead and reconstituted years ago. Ultron then asks, what about Tony? It worked on him. We all saw it. And Tony tells him, there was one reason why it worked. I'm a simulation. The real Tony Stark never came back. I am an artificial creation. So now I will give you a gift. On my command, the atomic separator will be fired and every part of Hank Pym will be removed finally. At that moment, you will know beyond any doubt that you are not the perfect fusion that you claim to be, because Hank Pym is long gone. Ultron stops. You're bluffing. That would leave Ultron in full control without any human emotion. You would destroy everything. And Tony asks, so? I'm willing to take that chance. Doctors, fire in 3, 2, and Ultron falls to his knees. Wait! I surrender. A short while later, a real call goes out to the Avengers to contain Ultron, and finally put a stop to all of the cyborgs converted in his experiments. Carol asks Tony if he's going to be all right, and he tells her that he's fine, even though in the back of his mind, all he can think of is that he isn't the real Tony. The real Tony died when she killed him. But once everyone is gone, Janet says that she knows he's a long way from fine. And Tony says, actually, you don't know me. You once said I had a new lease on life, but I never did. That was a lie. I'm nothing more than the echo of a man that you once knew. I'm not real, and you deserve someone who is. Janet tells him that she knows what's real and what's not. She can prove it. She kisses Tony, but as he pulls away, he flies off. I'm sorry, Janet, for everything. The next morning, Arno Stark goes on the news to tell everyone that he has in fact confirmed that the Tony Stark that they see is a false copy of his brother. It is also true that the AI Tony was a creation by him, meaning that any work that it has invented, armor, technology, not to mention Stark Unlimited, everything in it belongs to Arno Stark. As the new year rolls to 2020, many people in New York take to the streets to celebrate. All but one. Tony sits by himself in a bar telling the bartender that he'll take a scotch. The bartender pours the drink telling him that it'll be the last one of the year, huh? And Tony looks at it telling him, it'll be my first drink ever. This will be the first real alcohol that has touched my lips. What's the harm, right? As everyone in Times Square counts down, they are all greeted with a new year and a new Iron Man, Arno Stark. And there you go, one of the few Iron Man stories we've covered here, which made me realize we haven't covered a lot of Iron Man. Now, I thought about going back and doing Extremis, and I've also thought about doing the current one in which he becomes the God of Iron. But I'd like to know what you guys think down below. Do you want more Iron Man here at the channel? Because we can start working on some of those classic storylines and just bringing them out as nothing but full stories. Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what you think about the Iron Man comics, because Iron Man in the comics is not Iron Man in the movies. Personality's the same, but the crazy adventures he has are totally different. Anyway, guys, I hope to see you here next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Every Monday we bring you a full story, and every day of the week we try to bring you other comic book knowledge, and we'd love to have you be a part of that. I'll see you then.